Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We are here tonight to talk about the Seahawks once again. I am Brendan. That is Brandon. And we are here to talk about how the players are going to do. We already talked about how we think the team is going to do. We already went deep into that. But let's talk about the players that are going to get us there. Let's talk about the guys who are going to propel us to wherever it is that we're going. So, Brandon, thank you for coming out tonight.
It's great to be here, Brendan. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. So, by the way, please bear with my webcam. It's not working very well today, and I don't know why, but I also do not have the time to fix it right now. But yeah, tonight is going to be a night all about the players on the team. We're going to take a guess at some stats. Maybe if you still got your fantasy football draft, this could help you. If you've still got your draft coming up, which you got to get on that, I guess, because we got a game in 2 days.
Yeah, I hope they've had theirs by now.
Well,
It's very late.
If you waited until tomorrow, you would have known about Travis Kelce, right?
That's true. That's true. I'll tell you what, my Sky Moore pick on my fantasy is looking mighty nice right now.
Mm-hmm. Pretty good. Or what's the other guy? Rashid Rice, also maybe.
Rashee Rice. Yeah, we didn't like him though. I don't know if he was a
I
little rough.
liked him more than you did. I think he's all right.
He's going to take a little bit of time. That's all I'll say about it. He's going to take a little bit of a minute to get there. I don't know.
Okay, so before we get into the meat of the video, there are a couple things that we learned in the last couple of days about this team, and it's pretty much all good news. We got several players back today. We got several, yesterday actually. We got several players back yesterday. Devin Witherspoon was practicing, apparently in full. Devin Bush was back, although I think he was back for a little bit of last week as well, so the concussion doesn't seem like it's a big deal at all. We got Derek Hall back, which was earlier than I was expecting to get him back. We got Mike Morris back, which I was very much expecting him to be out for at least a little while here. Yeah. And we got Cam Young back last week, and I believe there was one other guy. There was one other guy who was returning. It wasn't Kenny McIntosh. I know that because Kenny McIntosh, I feel like I don't know. It's like we're acting like he's not even on the team right now because we're not getting any up. Oh, Darrell Taylor. Yeah, Darrell Taylor's back. And things are going much better now. So how do you feel?
I feel really good. As we had been talking about with these injuries prior, you never really had anything that was going to be something that's taking guys out for the full count, or that you're looking at guys that are really missing a massive, huge chunk of the season, which would be maybe the next worst thing. It's really guys that are going to be returned onto this ball club. And it was going to take a little bit longer than just at the start of training camp. That would have been ideal. But at the end of the day, you want the guys there and on the team and part of the team and helping the team win ball games. And what will be nice about this is as we get to game one, Brendan, I think we'll be very close to having not the full allotment. You'll be down a couple of guys, but those guys will be on deck due to return within a couple of weeks at most, probably. On top of that, being a Jamal Adams type, or where Jordan Brooks is in his fight with Bush between that competition. So it's really encouraging that these guys have bounced back, and it shows the team. This is, I think, kind of where the team's plan was with it. I thought that Mike Morris had shoulder surgery, so I was that one definitely caught me. I was like, wow, back already from side. It's one thing when it's wrist on a partial fracture like JSN. It's another thing when they're getting in there and digging around in the shoulder, and then he's back a couple weeks later.
Right.
You go, okay, it must have been very, very small arthroscopic surgery at that. But it's great to see, man. We're going to need all these guys. Part of what is, I think, going to drive this team this year, Brendan, is the depth from the standpoint of both. You have to call upon it when guys start to get beat up as this long season starts to bear down on you, but then also because you can call upon the depth to maybe go at mismatches offensively and defensively when you have your full assortment of guys. And these guys are all going to be guys that in some way I think are going to be able to help this team this year that you mentioned of that list. Some, of course, more than others, but Witherspoon especially nice because I don't know about you, but I'm trying to have to call off the dogs on my chat on some folks right now with Witherspoon as far as some of the presumptive, oh God, this pick was horrible. It's the worst pick. You can't make this pick. This was just, I'm trying to, okay, just tap our brakes, chill. We're good. Give him some time.
Yeah. I by this time next year, nobody's going to even remember that Witherspoon missed his entire first training camp in preseason. Like, how many people do you think remember that Rashad Penny missed his entire first training camp in preseason at this point? Nobody.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of stuff gets forgotten very quickly. What he does on the field in real games is the thing that people is actually going to remember.
Yeah. And it's of course being driven with the Carter thing in the background here. It's not just happening in the well, it's only just Witherspoon and what's going on with him within the Seahawks. It's also that situation over on the other side, which shouldn't be impacting it. But that's the part where we come back to say, let's just like you say, let's see what happens when he's on the field. Let's see what happens when everybody's out there rolling around and going full bore and see what kind of impact he can bring to this defense. And I think he's going to help this team out. They seem once he was out there finally, Brendan, didn't you get the feeling like with Carroll and even Schneider talking about it here the last day or so, that the team, the sense of confidence when he was out there, okay, once the pads got on, he started hitting, okay, this is the guy we got. This is what we were thinking we were getting. Didn't you kind of get that too? I'm not going to something specific as far as a comment, of course, but just a general feeling from Carroll when he was talking about it.
Yeah, I do. I would say that maybe they just held him out to be super cautionary, but I don't think he would do that with a rookie in his first preseason and training camp. So I do think the injury was legit, but it does feel very different now that he's out there. And they were saying he did pretty much everything. It's not like it was a partial practice. They behaved like it was a full practice.
Yeah. Well, that's the annoying thing about the groins and the hamstrings is you have to wait until that final all the way through there. If it's a loading screen, you got to go all the way through 99% to the final 0 point. Because if you bring it back at 99%, they can pull it right back through down to 15. So you got to go all the way. Once you do get to the other side, usually they are fully over it. And let's also, for the record, Brendan, let it show. This was out of Coach Carroll's mouth when it comes to this injury, because there's some that are a little bit, I think, confused about this. This was not a new hamstring injury from the one that he sustained this prior off season. It's on the same leg, but it's in a different spot, you have multiple muscles, just like your shoulder has 3 muscles. There's multiple muscles, multiple things going back there. So it's in a different place according to Carroll. So that hopefully maybe give us some confidence he can get all through this fully now, especially now that he's in an NFL training program and they're probably getting him right in that respect.
Right. So most of the injury news is clear. Like I said, we put Derek Young on IR. We know that, but I think we've been expecting that for a month or so.
I was calling it that hernia, man. It was going to be I thought he might have said groin, but it is hernia, isn't it? You got the sports hernia surgery.
I don't know if they officially said it was sports hernia. I know they thought it might be sports hernia, but I don't think they went beyond it.
Yeah. But not surprising. Not another serious injury though. One where we will get him back, and we seemed like, Brendan, we're going to get a trickling in of receivers throughout the course of this year back from Eskridge to Derek Young. So nice to know you got some reserves, I guess, waiting right now offline. But we did expect it.
Yeah, and Kenny McIntosh also haven't really heard anything about McIntosh yet, which is weird because he was supposed to be back in a couple weeks, and that was 5 weeks ago.
Well, in that theory, my theory on that injury is that, and it's just from years of seeing this stuff more than it is I have insider knowledge on this or something, Brendan, but to me it feels like a torn MCL. It's essentially the Cam Chancellor injury from the Super Bowl that he sustained. And so when the injury was, what did they have it on the 4th, I believe, would have been the scrimmage game that he sustained it. And a torn MCL is going to be a 4 to 6er. And depends, of course, just how you feel as a player, but I'm sure they're going to feel the need to probably give that as much time as possible, understanding where the running back room has been in recent years, and that you got your other 3 guys at least running fully, so you don't feel as much a need to, get him pushed out there as fast. That's just my theory on it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Unfortunately, we can survive without him, but it would have been fun to have McIntosh out there. I think he would have at least done a little bit of work on special teams.
Agreed. The good news here, though, is that we do know with our running back room, chances are very good, you're going to be calling on this guy at some point in time and get him some touches throughout the course of the season, I think, if history holds, recent history.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's about it in terms of news. We did have the official depth chart released earlier today from the team, and there were some interesting things. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it yet.
I passed over it a little bit. I'm never sure if I should really give that thing a full measure of validity. If it's something where like an intern has just thrown it together and pumped it up, and then people are like, this guy's here on this now, or if it's really like Coach Carroll's given the full, like, yeah, that's exactly what this is going to be. I mean, I just always thought, even from a tactical sense, if I was a coach, I'd sort of like sandbag a little bit on my depth chart. It's a little thing, but it's still a thing.
Yeah, there were some interesting things on it though. DJ Dallas was second string running back. He was ahead of Charbonnet. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it could be that they want him to be the third down back. I mean, what
Yeah,
makes
that's
sense.
what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think you're onto it there. Because you go. Everybody's got a role, right? You go. Walker's your bell. Dallas is your third down back, and then Charbonnet is your short yardage guy. And then
Yeah.
McIntosh works in where you can work him in as sort of the jack of all trades kind of back within the flex there. Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense.
And yeah, I guess so. It was interesting though. Threw some people for a loop. Brooks was the starter over Bush, although that could just be a reflection of, assuming good health. This is how we would have it.
The
But
team
we won't
loves.
necessarily.
You know this goes, Brennan. They love certain guys, don't they? Though I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a cynical sob on this one, Brendan. You can call me out on it if I am, but just feels like they have some guys that they're going to want to run them out there because they just have that faith, that undying faith in them. And maybe they just don't like Bush. I don't know. And maybe Brooks is just that much better. Maybe I'm just completely wrong on him. But, if he goes out there and gives, McVay kills Brooks. McVay and Shanahan are kind of Brooks's the main instigators of him. Which way do you lean, though? Do you just say, well, let's Brooks with Bobby, Brooks back more in a kind of a will roll-ish more than
I think it would be a disaster to have Brooks starting week 1. If we do that, I think that's a complete train wreck.
Okay. Glad I'm not alone on this one because but it does feel like sometimes there's some forces that impel the coaching staff a little bit with certain situations and, trying to kind of make Brooks a thing here. They're trying to make him and he's not a bad player, but just the coverage stuff is where we've got to worry about with him, especially coming in. Let's just take it on this week. Let's not go past 17 weeks. Let's go week 1 with him. McVay kills Brooks with the flood zone concepts. That's why I say Shanahan and McVay. And Shanahan last year started leaning into it in a way that McVay had only kind of been the main guy to do it. Last year it was kind of like Shanahan had this light bulb go over his head going, wait, this is how we go after this guy. And remember those plays even from last year. The kid will play up the middle and the Raiders played to the back end zone. There's so much of it is just you can just overwhelm him with that. So this week, if you talk about the Rams looking to lean on something that they can just sort of pick us apart with, if he's out there, they will lean into that. They're not just going to we have to go all over the field. They'll attack that one spot and hit it over and over again. And you'll end up looking at the game going, when we look at the numbers off PFF, going, well, he was targeted 11 times and gave up 8 receptions for 122 yards. It is a possible problem. Maybe he gets it fixed, though. Maybe he finally has it resolved after this offseason.
I mean, I don't think he had time to do anything this offseason except rehab. It wouldn't be this offseason, would it?
I wouldn't think so, man. I really wouldn't. And this does go back to the final 2 years of his play at college as well. The struggles in zone. It's not just a 1-year thing. Remember the whole thing when he came out, Brendan, the whole excuse was, well, no, but he's playing the spy role as a linebacker. That's why he didn't have any knockdowns or breakup attempts on 80 targets or whatever it was, 80 dropbacks in college in his final year. And it just is, to me, it feels like more I feel like I always got to parse this because I know there's always some people that love certain play. There's some stuff he does really good. He's one of the better tacklers on the team. He's a great hitter. He's fast as hell, one of the fastest linebackers in the sport. He's really good in man coverage, but he plays on a team that's going to play zone coverage with their linebackers. And that element that he does is not particularly very, very stellar. In fact, it's one of the league worst. And so if he's, as Brendan said, been rehabbing, if he's at 92% of Jordan Brooks, as opposed to getting 100% of Devin Bush out there right now. I'm not saying Devin's the answer, but at least I don't know exactly what Devin will do back there. And Devin did post some nice coverage scores in preseason when he played.
Yeah, I thought Devin had a good preseason.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so I think you got to give him this shot. But that's about it. Oh, Trey Brown took the starting job from Mike Jackson, if the depth chart is to be believed. There was that.
I think it's we don't know how the practices looked, but certainly by the preseason performance, indeed he kind of had him beat out there. So if he was
absolutely,
if he was nose and nose, if it was even Steven coming into the preseason games between those two guys in the competition, easy to understand why then Trey Brown overtook it. He was the far superior player here in the preseason period.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for the investment. Like players coaches just have it in their head that a certain player is better than another player. Trey Brown was a 4th-round pick. Mike Jackson was somebody we picked up off of another team's waiver wire, I think. So there probably is some deeply embedded belief that Trey Brown's just better. And I could definitely be talked into that. There's some stuff that Trey Brown can do that Jackson can't.
Agreed. I think he's got a level of twitchiness to his game that Jackson kind of doesn't come close to. Jackson's got the size and length over him. Probably a better tackler, but as a coverage corner, and especially if you're going to want to run some more man concepts, I don't think you can run any kind of man concepts with Mike Jackson out there. I do think you can run some man concepts with Trey Brown. And so that does maybe also inform this decision just a little bit. But I maintain, Brendan, Trey Brown to me had the third most impressive season for a rookie cornerback in Seahawks history. And that does also where the coaching staff could be informed on this is if the kid's gotten back to where he looked a couple seasons ago, then he would be the obvious answer over the top of Jackson. If that's the player we're getting, is that kid that was out there in that first 6 or 7 games where he was really locking things up, then
Yeah.
Jackson's just not that good. I'm not bad. I'm not a hater. I like Jackson all right, but that's a pretty good corner from Trey Brown. That's a guy who has an upside like a DJ Reed. He's got that kind of upside to his game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can get behind it. And let's see here. Oh, there was one last thing that caught my attention on the depth chart. It was DJ Dallas is doing kickoff returns, which that's fine, but he's also doing punt returns, which is not fine. So hopefully quickly here we can find somebody else who can do it. Like maybe Trey Brown, maybe, although if he's starting, maybe not, but maybe you could get McIntosh out there eventually if he's healthy. There's got to be something better than DJ Dallas out there.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about, I hate the idea of putting corners out there. I always hated putting Earl out back there when they put him back there for a while. I guess I think about it, not having anybody on the roster right now. I don't want Eskridge back there doing it. That's for sure. I don't want Lockett back there. It almost becomes like, well, you have to do it to Dallas because you don't have anybody else you like to do it, put out there. There's nobody on the active roster that makes sense. I mean, we're going to have Cody Thompson out there rolling it. So I guess you're kind of stuck here until maybe McIntosh comes back to see what maybe he can supply from this. But boy, DJ Dallas I hope he's really worked on it this offseason because he showed off a really lack of feel for how to adjust to the ball in air, how to react to balls hit up in front of him on the hops and whatnot. I mean, teams really kind of took advantage of him last year when he was back there like that.
And that's about it. But come week 2, maybe everything will be changed up. Maybe even this weekend. Maybe the depth chart is just they throw stuff out there and they don't really think that hard about it, and it's not going to be reflected in the game.
It could be. Like I said, there's a little bit of a potential advantage there by putting it in a weird light if you wanted to as a coach. Not saying that's what they're doing, but I might play with that a bit if I was a coach, especially coming into the season. Every advantage counts.
It's the Bill Belichick way.
That's the Bill Belichick way. That's right. The ways of the dark side.
The Snail, thank you for the $2. Great Derek Hall vid today, Brandon.
I did thank you. Appreciate it, Snail. Thank you, man. I thought this initially, Brendan, you can attest to this. We did the draft breakdowns on this. Was not a late comp for me. I was saying Terrell Suggs very early on before he was a Hawk when we were just looking at him. And really after going back and looking at the preseason tape, the all 22 tape, especially with him, when you can watch what he does, it's again just reinforces to me that he's not going to become Terrell Suggs with that level of performance of what Suggs put up for a career. But I think that he can become very close to what Suggs was by winning in the same kind of ways and dealing with that, having that just kind of unusual amount of strength and power where you have a position that usually that does get kind of, like I mentioned in the video, LJ Collier got neutralized in that way, but Hall doesn't look like the kind of guy. He's going to have more truer power than that won't be neutralized.
Right.
Thank you, though, Snail.
Yeah. Did you like Derek Hall more than Ojulari in the draft? That to me was like the two guys were very, very close.
They were very, very close. I had a hard time getting fully on board with Ojulari, but part of it was probably just because I ended up liking his brother's tape more coming out of college. And if I was comparing the two, it's like his was so much more rawer and rougher. And you mentioned that when we were talking about this, I think during the draft process, you go saying, well, but Brandon, he was a very young guy too, though, is the younger Ojulari, which I think he was like one of those 21-year-old kids coming out, which should be taken into account and factored. I think Hall's probably a year or two older. And they both win in different ways. I think I lean to Derek Hall because I'm not really sure if Ojulari is really going to get to the realization of that place. He was a little bit like me. Remember that kid out of LSU on the LSU national title who was a twitchy edge, Bruce Irvin type, and he got all the sacks off stunts. And I was getting sometimes the vibes of a guy like that in Ojulari. And with Hall, I really thought that he had a couple of things that could transition well to the pro game because his power was for real. You know, I mean, if you're bowling SEC offensive tackles week in and week out, that means probably the power is going to translate. If LJ Collier's doing that in TCU at the Leicester Conference against lesser foes, I mean, it's not necessarily as apt to translate. So I think I liked him a smidge more. I think you might end up selling me on Ojulari as much as anybody by the end of it, but I still think I had Hall a little bit ahead of him.
Yeah, I remember the guy I really liked was Felix, the guy the Chiefs got. He was my favorite. And then it was like next tier Hall and Ojulari and maybe a couple other guys.
Felix was solid too. Felix, I think, and Derek Hall on my list were on my horizontal board were touched, kissing basically. They're right next to each other. And I think I had Hall, I think maybe a little over him, but I'm not sure on that one. I have to go back and consult it. They were definitely right next to each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. The Snail, thank you for the member message for 11 months. Promote ESOP for punt returns. Well, I mean, if you promote ESOP, then you need to demote, probably Cody Thompson would be the guy, right?
And that's what I would do. Be consistent with your approach if you're going to be the Seahawks here. You've indicated that you value special teams. You've indicated that you don't want to just, for no pun intended here, punt on that position. So if that's the case, and you've spent the money on Myers and you spent the money on Dixon, and you spent the money on Ballore, and you've had some parts of this roster built to help accommodate that special teams, take it all the way. And by taking it all the way, don't have a basically, I'm not going to call him waste of space as a punt returner, but he's not comfortable doing it back there, is DJ Dallas. He has no natural feel to do it. And I don't know the last guy I saw in the NFL, Brendan, who didn't have a natural feel for doing the punt return game, who eventually became very comfortable in his feel for doing it. It's one of those things you can do or you can't. You can get maybe marginally better at your reads after the catch and all that, but the whole process of that's what I feel like. Here's what I feel like Dallas is doing the whole time. Punts in the air. Okay. Here's what he's doing. I'm not catch it. I'm not catching. I'm not catching. I'm not catching. Oh, it's rolling. Oh, it's still, or it bounces in front of him. Bounce. Oh, it bounced. That's what we're going to get on Sunday if that's the way that goes. So I would like to see ASIP too, Snail. I think it's a great. And those, Snail, you're only making that suggestion because ASIP's a Washington State Cougar. I won't hold it against you because it's still smart.
Do you remember the game they would play in training camp sometime with offensive linemen where they would each try to catch a punt?
Oh, yeah.
And if like 3 out of 5 caught it, they would get the rest of the day off or something.
Oh, yeah. Those players got more hype for that than anything else when those guys are sitting under those punts. Because they do it late in camp when the players' legs are all tired and everybody could use that extra day off. So there's like everybody's got a lot of emotion on the line on those ones. Like, please hit this. Please, by God, hit this.
Right. Okay. So I think that's about it. So let's move along to the Seahawks and their players. How are they going to perform this year? What kind of numbers are they going to put up? Are they going to set some records? Are they going to maybe win some MVPs? Are they going to make the All-Pro team, make a Pro Bowl? Who's got the best chances on this team? Let's run it down here real quick. Let's start with the quarterback because everybody loves the quarterback. Everyone cares about the quarterback.
No,
we all know who our quarterback is going to be this year. It is Gino Smith. So let's see here. Last year he had a career season. It was, I think he set a franchise record for completion percentage, just under 70%, almost 4,300 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So this year I kind of went a little bit better because, as bold as this sounds, his situation is objectively better than it was last year, right? There's no way it's going to be worse. He's getting JSN. He's getting Charbonnet. He's getting a pair of tackles that are entering their second year. So I went with, let's start with yards. I went with 4,733. What did you go?
Let's go. I love that. I'm going to choose the exact number thing you did. I'm stealing that cray. Well, let's go with that. All right. I'll go 4,607 yards.
Yeah, I think this is a team that is going to have to lean heavily on their offense to win games because I don't think we'll have a great defense. I think that we are going to have a better running game this year, but it's not going to be dominant. It's not like Gino's going to get to hand the ball off every second half all day like Jalen Hurts does. So the numbers are going to be there for him for sure. And given that we're adding JSN, maybe we even end up saying that Jake Bobo, whatever we get from Bobo this year, is better than what we got from guys like Cade Johnson and Laquan Treadwell last year, right?
Hard to think it wouldn't be, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think that goes up. I also have his completion percentage going up because when you think about it, last year he was fitting the ball into tight windows. It's not like that 70% came easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That 70% came hard. He was threading the needle so much, throwing to receivers that weren't really that open, working without a true slot receiver. As much as I like Goodwin, he's not a true slot. This year, he has the purest slot we've seen in a while. So I actually went a little crazy here. I said he'll come just shy of 73%.
Ooh, holy. That might be an NFL record, by the way.
I looked it up. It's close, but it's not.
Oh, it isn't. Okay. That's still be darn close. I like it, though. I like it. Where do you have his touchdowns?
I have 34, which is just a few more than he had last year.
Okay.
And I went with 10 interceptions because I think that at the end of the day, he's not the kind of quarterback who is going to be able to have a full season where he just goes like 4 or 5 interceptions. There's just going to be a couple of dodgy throws in him. He's got a couple of throws like that in him. It is what it is.
He's too ballsy. Not too ballsy, not a bad way, but he's just too ballsy to be a guy that's going to have like an Aaron Rodgers like year where it said 4 interceptions. Yeah, I like that. I like that he's ballsy. Yeah, I will too. Yeah. This is that we call the price of doing business. You know, the price of those big plays and making those big time throws is you're going to get a couple that are going to be taken the other way.
Right. And I also said he takes 38 sacks, which is a little bit better than last year, but it's not quite up there with the elite of the elite in that category. Of course, it's okay. So what do you got?
Well, 4,607 yards. I did get drawn in the way you did, and I think you make a very good argument for this maybe be going up even more. For a couple of different reasons. The ones you mentioned, I don't want to double back over that, but also because of the fact that your defense could be giving up points and yardage, and that's going to then require the offense to continue to throw a lot, even when it's being productive, which means more yards than for Gino within that. I also think that when you look at this offensive line, I keep coming back to it, Brendan, where 4/5 of it as it stands right now. I don't know how to register where Damian Lewis is exactly, but he seems to be more of a pass protector at left guard, weirdly, right now, than run blocker. And so 4/5 of your offensive line is set up to pass protect first and foremost. And so I do believe that the offense is going to carry the day for this team, and that Gino's arm and the passing attack is going to carry the day beyond that. So I have 4,600 yards. I did have 71% like you. I look at last year in that first 12-game stretch, and I say, I think Gino can sustain that for a full year. I think the reasons that fell off were explainable. The poor performance by the offensive line, the rookies hitting the wall, the interior of the offensive line kind of falling apart as the year went on a little bit, not having a slot receiver like you mentioned, having to take running backs off the street. I don't think all of those things are going to happen all at once again like they did last year, on top of the defense being as bad as it was, which then caused the offense, like that final 49er game in the playoffs, to feel like it had to score every time. We felt this in 2020, right? You can feel this when this happens to quarterbacks where they're going, oh hell, the defense ain't here today. I gotta take this thing up every single time up the football field for us to win this game. And that happened in that Niner game after that first half when we were up. And so you remove those parts, and now he plays within himself, and he can be that spectacular guy he was through those first 12 games. 71%. I have 35 touchdowns. I'm at 11, probably 12 interceptions. Like you said, I think there's just going to be a couple more picks in here. There were a lot of those turnover worthy throws throughout last year that were up. I don't think it's a real stat in nature of that's like one you can rely on as like the holy word, but it's an interesting one to sort of at least side eye and pay attention to within this process. So I think he's going to be really good. He's going to put up new records here as a Seahawks quarterback in this year with some of those numbers. And he's going to be awesome. I think he's going to be awesome overall in his decision-making and what he does. Pro Bowler, don't think he'll quite get to All-Pro City, but I do think he will be a Pro Bowler, maybe a second-team All-Pro. Who knows? Depends on how the rest of quarterbacks go across.
Yeah, I mean, now if this Kelsey thing lingers, Mahomes' numbers are going to be in a little bit of jeopardy, I think. There's
Very
Burrow.
much.
I think Burrow's going to be great, I'm sure. I got no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I feel like Herbert has there's like a Herbert, Josh Allen, like Gino is going to have one heck of a time cracking that list.
I agree. I mean, Herbert especially feels like he's just about ready, right? Like he's been playing well, and now they've got that line back. He's got the one guy who they remember he had that really nice left tackle. I think it was that tore something was Slater. Yeah, so he was out like all last year, and then you got Zion Johnson coming. So they finally built the lineup. Is kind of what I'm saying, right? Lindsley's in there as well from the Packers, former center there. They finally have kind of put that line together now. If it can stay healthy, that's always seems the key with the Chargers. They always seem like their training staff sucks or something because they always are really talented, but can they stay healthy? And I think he could ascend to that spot where he just puts up those funny money numbers, in regards to Herbert. But
right.
Gino will be efficient and it won't take him a trillion attempts, I don't think, to get there, because I think there will be some efficiency in the run game as well here too, which will balance some of this off.
Yeah, I have 548 pass attempts, which is a little bit less than last year, because I don't think we're going to be in such terrible situations like last year where, you had that Lions game where we just could not stop throwing the ball because the defense was so bad. Yeah. We had the Panthers game where we had no running backs and we played from behind the whole game. Yeah.
No, it's very much true. I don't think you're going to be running back into that again this season. And so I think it's smart to build in to go, this would be somewhere of a overcome we're not going to have to run back into. And that should make him, again, more, you talk about your efficiency number, like the passing percentage, 73%. If those things are like we're saying they are, that's what's going to bring that efficiency up. That's going to make it easier for him to play the position and be able to be more accurate, because he's not having to press on those throws where it's like, I really got to make this, like the interception against the Falcons, right? Remember the end? That's the one everybody wanted to kind of knock
basically
him for.
A Hail Mary.
Yeah, and everybody was like, see, this is proof he can't bring you back at the end of games. That's what the haters were saying to Gino in that game. And I'm sitting there going, no, it's him knowing, it's like you say, it's a Hail Mary situation. He's got to just try to do something. There's too many of those moments last year. The scoregami game with the Lions where you couldn't punt once the whole game. Too many of those kind of situations. That's hard to play the quarterback position and be perfect all day, or that being the expectation in order for you to get the dub. And this team's not constructed that way this year.
Right. Also gave Drew Lock 29 yards. He gets in at some point, throws a couple passes.
Okay. Is it in garbage time? Are we talking
what
49-7 on the Cardinals or the Rams?
Or something like he's going to get in there and he's not going to just hand it off. At some point, he's going to throw a pass.
I'm with it, dude. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I went 3 for 4 for 29 yards.
Okay.
Human victory cigar.
I can definitely see it, man. It's hard not to see that in a couple of these games against the Rams and the Cards, you end up in the third quarter just basically you've lapped them 2 or 3 times, and you're just going, okay, mercy rule. Mercy.
Let's see here. The Snail, thank you for the $2 again. Mafe, Chenna, and Hall all get more than 10 sacks. That would be quite a rookie season for Hall, wouldn't it?
It would be a huge season for Hall to pull that off, because if you look at the historical markers here, they are not necessarily super kind to second round edge rushers getting more than 4 sacks a year. That seems to be about the ceiling for those first year guys as they're figuring it out. He has the talent, and you listen to KJ Wright, as I put it in my video. KJ said, you could be defensive rookie of the year in what he was seeing off of him in the practice field. So I suppose it all does come down to how effective he can be with that long arm bull rush. And if he can just sit there and use it, over and over and just let it roll. But I do have Mafe and Uchenna on my, as we'll be going through on the Snail. I do have those guys over 10. I do have Hall just a little bit down, though, to having a good year, being a little bit productive with some of the pass rush, but definitely being within closer to the historical norms we kind of see for these guys. I think I had in the last 6 years, you've had 15 edge rushers taken in the second round, and nobody got past 4 sacks in their first rookie season.
Yeah. I think it's possible Taylor maybe could get 10. Like Chenna and Taylor both got to, I think, 9.5 last year. Mafe should be making a big turn. I guess that's possible, but I don't think Hall's going to get 10 sacks. That's tough.
Maybe let's see if you agree with this. I think that Taylor could potentially, obviously we've thought about it being potentially trade bait through here at some point, used in that way, but he's also a guy I think that could find his snaps reduced a little bit this year, because in Hall, I think you can trust with him out on the football field to go out there and be down there on early downs. When you brought back Bruce Irvin, for instance, last year, you still couldn't quite fully trust Bruce out there off the edge in his run defense. I mean, you couldn't back to his old days. He's gotten maybe a little bit better back into the later years and with his, old man strength that he had. But he still wasn't like a big, good part of his game. So you could have moments last year between Taylor and Irvin where you go, okay, get Taylor out there because we don't have necessarily the backup edge there, who is the guy who can stop the run if there's the threat of that on a particular play. With a guy like Hall, though, you do have that to me. You have a guy that is significantly better against the run than Darrell Taylor already right now. And so does that end up relegating Darrell Taylor to the Bruce Irvin role, the fourth edge in the rotation, and only coming out when it's passing downs, which I think might remove a few bites of the apple at him for him to get up to that production this year?
But here's what I would say. I think we're going to have a really good offense this year. And if we have a really good offense, teams are going to have to keep up. And in order to keep up, they're going to have to pass a lot. So there might be more passing situations than we're thinking right now.
It's possible. I mean, that's the thing that's definitely worked for even teams like the Eagles last year that were bad in run defense, but had a good defense and set a league record in sacks, despite the fact that they couldn't really stop the run. So there's some proof to your, to what you're presenting forward on that. I think it is possible. It does make it hard with our defense because if we get up by a lead, Brendan, we're just dropping into soft zones. And Carroll's going to be like, well, I'm not letting him get back into this game unless they earn it by, executing play after play after play in the short stuff. And then the quarterback's just sort of taking the 7-yard hitches. And, that's the part that I guess will remain to be seen. Then they're going to have to press those routes up to let those guys have, because then the guys don't have the time to get to the quarterback, right? Those short routes don't allow them to actually get a win. It's like the ball's out of the quarterback's hand before they're even back there. But Taylor's got the ability. He was our most efficient rusher last year. That's the thing you can say about Taylor. He can get to 10 sacks and he can do it efficiently. He got to where he got last year. It was tremendously on just not many. He might have been one of the better ones last year as far as sacks, pressures for rep, how many it took him to get there. Yeah.
I think he was. Yeah.
Yeah. He was tremendously efficient with that. But that's also representative of the team being very precise in how they're positioning him out there, right? There's a protective lens over the top of the Taylor experience right now.
Yeah. And we should be able to be more empowered to do that this year because Maffei's ready to take on a bigger load.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah. I mean, Maffei absolutely looks like he's ready to take that step forward too.
Mm-hmm. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Hit the like button for the Killer Bees, folks. Right.
Thank you, Garth. Appreciate you, Snail.
If this video gets to 50,000 likes, I'll call the default Fortnite skin at 3 a.m. on FaceTime. Never know what might happen there.
It's on the record. Let's make him hold up to it.
The 3 a.m. challenge is pretty 4 years ago, but it comes back every now and then. I think most people in the chat will know what I'm talking about.
Hey, it sounds good. It livens things up a little bit.
Okay, running backs now. Let's do the running backs, talk about what I think they're going to do. And this is just as runners. We'll get to catching passes in a second here. But as running backs go, I think our running game will be a little bit better than it was last year, because last year we lost our starting running back after like 4.5 games.
Mm-hmm.
And and Walker missed some time at the end of the season, and I think he was playing hurt at some point.
Agreed.
And DJ Dallas got hurt at some point, and Travis Homer had a bad year. He got hurt like 3 different times and was bad when he was out there. It was a little bit of a mash unit of a running back core last year. It really was.
It's been like that for about 7 years now, man. All fours just always get killed. It seems like it's crazy.
Now, I would like to say that I think that we're going to really evenly split carries among all these running backs we have. But I think in practice, once the season starts, most coaches are going to say, I want my best guy or my favorite guy out there as much as possible. Mm-hmm. So I do think that K9 is going to be your workhorse. I have 270 rushing attempts.
Ooh.
For 12,096 yards and 9 touchdowns. Just rushing, by the way, to be clear.
Okay. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have a number there?
I do. I'm just making sure my numbers add up here. So I've got him at 240 rushing attempts at 5.3 yards per carry average for 1272.
Close, very close.
This year. So I even think to a degree that he could potentially get over the top of that, but I think that they're going to try to balance the load a bit here. That's emblematic of taking Zach Charbonnet in the first place, I think, and that the running back room, if it can stay healthy, will go through it. Plus, look, I mean, probably gonna have to sit out a game or two. We got to build this into recent history where it's like probably not going all 17 games, and that's okay. But yeah, I've got him really, especially at the 5.3 yard per carry average, just being awesome in that respect with the efficiency and big play machine again for you out there. But I love his game, Brendan. I think he's a guy that a lot of Hawk fans are kind of forgetting about a little bit. You've had 3 running backs in your history that have run for 1,000 yards in 50 years, 50 plus years. 3. That means it's not easy to do. And that's also establishing, Brendan, that you've had through the majority of the time that you've been around as a football franchise, the league was a run-based league for the majority of that time. And still you had only 3 rookie running backs. You had ground knucks here. Only one, you had 1,000-yard run. You've only had 3. So I think that does show you that this kid is kind of a little bit of the real deal with that, especially having the 2 rookies blocking from up front and the interior of the line being as bad as it was kind of down through the stretch, also playing through the injury. But that's where I've got him at. 1349, I think he'll probably only get 9 touchdowns though. Zach Charbonnet he's gonna eat a hungry hippo a few of those touchdowns.
Right. I would say a little bit better, but that Carroll's gonna send him into the no-fly zone of the interior A gap, B gap runs. It's gonna happen a few times.
Sure.
And there's gonna be a fair few 2-yard losses, 1-yard gain, no gain carries in his repertoire that are not really his fault.
100%. I think what comes down to his improvement this year, though, Brendan, and why I think last year he was 4.8 yard per carry, and why I think this year he goes to 5.3, is because the thing he had to learn is the thing that I think all running backs have to learn, especially in zone-based systems, which is a zone-based system is a little bit more, it's a little more rigid in its structure. It's not so much you being the artist out there as a running back and just feeling the flow wherever you want to go. It's sometimes taking those 3 yards in a cloud of dust without the less negative plays and knowing when it is you can balance it out and knowing when it is you got to put your head down and take the dirty 3. And I think that that's what he's going to learn better this year, with like most backs all do when they come forward in that realm into year 2 in a system like this. And that's where I see the improvement coming from with him. And I think he's the one guy drafted on my fantasy league of the Seahawks team. I mean, I really have trust and faith that these numbers are going to hold true, if not even go more so. I think he's got a top end that could easily crest over 1,500 yards.
Yeah. Next up, I had Charbonnet. I got 76 carries, 345 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Okay. I thought about giving him a couple more touchdowns because he might be the power back, but I don't know. I don't think he's like an ideal power back at this point. I think that he needs to run a little more decisively if he wants to be considered a true power back. But I do think he's going to vulture a few. But I just feel like there's going to be some games this year where Walker just ends up playing pretty much the whole game because Carroll thinks he's our best running back. And he's like, I want him out there as much as I can possibly get him out there. And he kind of loses track of balancing the offense with a guy like Charbonnet. But I say 345 rushing yards.
I've got him at 140 carries on the year, so only 100. Yes, I think the team is going to try to lean into putting these guys into roles, and the theory going is that if we put them into roles, we can reduce down the wear and tear, and we can put guys into the optimal place for them to have success. Whereas in recent years, it's not been as much. Homer would come out a little bit as a third down back, but as much as in recent years, you've had an idea to do this, you just haven't had the health to do it. I mean, teams tried this before. It's just guys end up falling apart, so they've got to rock with Walker as the third down back, as they did last year at times. I see a 4.7 yard per carry average for Zach Charbonnet this year. Obviously, being a short yardage back, you're going to have some of your yard per carry average taken down in general, just because you're going to be in third and goal situations, 3rd and 1 situations. But I do have him then getting 658 yards on the ground this year and having a really good rookie year from that standpoint. But them utilizing that balance in there, they're going to get up on teams, in my opinion, and then they're going to start to run the ball a little bit like the Holmgren days. Throw to get the lead, run to win the game.
How many yards total would that be if it was
658?
Oh. I could very much get behind that. That would be a great rookie year for Charbonnet.
I think there's going to be a couple games where you're going to have him over 20 carries. That's going to help to put this, a lot of games where there might be just like you say, they're caught up in the Walker of get him the carries. But the second that you got Charbonnet starting a game, Carroll's going beast mode with him. Let's wear these suckers down.
Next up, I had Gino Smith. And I don't want to forget that he does use his legs from time to time. And it is a weapon that plays a part in some of these games. So I went with 61 carries, 351 yards, and 1 touchdown. Pretty similar to what he had last year.
Is that what he had, 350?
It's pretty close to what he had last year. Let me check to be sure. But I think it was roughly in line with what he was doing last year. Let me try to grab it here. Yeah, it was 68 carries for 366 yards. So I just have a few more runs.
Okay.
A few fewer runs, excuse me.
Yeah.
A few less.
That makes sense.
Did you have rushing stats for Gino?
I didn't, but I think where you're at is about where I'd be. 60 carries, 5.5 yard per carry average, 330 yards, somewhere in about like there.
For we QB sneak with Gino. We didn't really do it with Russ. It wasn't really a good part of his game that we liked. But with Gino, we're going to QB sneak, and that's going to be like, that's going to kill the yard per carry average a little bit, but
we
it's
didn't run
valuable.
we didn't run it very well in that Packer game, bro. And
Really?
it did not look like the Eagles'
Yeah.
way they're running it. It looked like a mess with Locke trying to do it. But I hope you're right. I hope they do at least try it a little bit to a degree because it is kind of a freebie play. But you're right. If they do that, then that's probably going to bring him down. That probably increase his carries. He'd probably be more like 80 carries on the year at that point. But probably wouldn't be that many more yards, maybe 15 to 20 more yards because those would be just him diving forward to get a single yard for a first down or a touchdown.
Mm-hmm. DJ Dallas, he'll just pick up whatever's left over between the other guys, and I don't think we're gonna put a huge load on him. Like if there was ever a point where we had to start DJ Dallas, that's the game where you just drop back and pass like 50 times. You're not gonna ask DJ Dallas to carry the load. But I did go 23 carries for 129 yards and 1 touchdown.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in a different spot on this because every single year he's been here as a Seahawk, he's had over 30 carries. So, and especially with your recent news to me that he's our third down back, it would seem like starting out. I'm going to go with 35 carries. We'll go with a 4.7 yard per carry average again with that. That'd be about 164 yards on the season, about 165 yards on the season for him. Would be where I go. But I do think if he's going to be the main third down back, Brendan, I think just by being out there that many more snaps, he's probably going to be closer to like a 300-yard mark on the year if they're going to use him that way, if that really is their intent.
I feel like Charbonnet takes that third down back job at some point. He's a great pass catcher. He blocked well in the preseason. I think that can be part of his game.
I would think so as well. And I'd probably count on that more often than not. They're going to want to try to get him touches, especially if Walker's going strong. You're going to look to manufacture at that point for him.
Kenny McIntosh, I didn't have much, which actually kind of works out now because for all we know, he's not going to even play this year with the MCL. But even when he's on the field, I don't think he's going to carry the ball that much. That's not really his game. I went with the 9 carries for 38 yards.
So I actually think that they're going to try to find him within a realm of the fly sweep guy. I do think he comes back. Eskridge is down the first 6 games. I don't think they want to necessarily push Eskridge into this role of running those fly sweeps. I also see it. If you look even in the preseason, we ran like 2 fly sweeps, and it was to DJ Dallas as the receiver, as the fly sweep receiver. So they've shown some willingness on this in my mind to use the running back as the fly sweep receiver guy, and especially a guy like McIntosh who can actually maybe go out there and run some routes. So I'm actually going to put him down for 55 carries on the year. Many of those coming on fly sweeps, like probably 20 of those carries coming on fly sweeps, something like that, 15 to 20. Then I'd put him at 275 yards for the season.
Okay. All right. I also had Dwayne Eskridge, 2 carries for 13 yards. At this point, though, I'm thinking about not even that, because by the time he is eligible to play, we might be over it. We might be like, we like what we got with Bobo. We like what we got with Cody Thompson. We like what we got. And we're just not going to bring him back ever.
I'm not unconvinced of the very same thing you are. I think what they're doing with Eskridge right now is the reason he hasn't been cut is that they do like his talent. Yes, they do like the thought that there is something unrealized there that he might still become, but also that there's the insurance policy he provides them now. We pay 1/3 less of his salary. Then when we get down to him being off a suspension, if it's not good, if we don't like it, then we'll kick him. We'll release it. If we're good with our depth, we'll just release him. If everybody's strong and everybody's running good, but if DK goes down, Tyler goes down, well, then there's a little bit more of an opening, and we've got the insurance policy here that we can call upon to utilize if it goes in a weird direction. And so I like that they've got that insurance policy. I get why they've held on to him, but I'm like you, I'm not going to put down any carries for him because I don't think the team necessarily has a true plan in place here for this guy at this point.
Yeah, and I had Derek Young 1 carry for 9 yards. Just randomly happens at some point this year. I just have a feeling.
It could. It was startling looking at last year's data, Brendan, when I was doing some research, and about 5 fly sweep attempts on the whole year last year.
Right.
I mean, the Rams do that in a quarter sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Killer Bees. I gotta say, Charbonnet's film from Michigan looked like a Pete Carroll running back, but at UCLA, he was definitely a Chip Kelly back. We'll see. Yeah. I actually met Charbonnet last week. He was doing a signing at a local card shop, and I was actually there, so I got to meet him. And cool attitude, good guy.
It's nice. You say, "Come on, kids, come on, do an interview on the channel."
Yeah. We didn't really have time for that. That wouldn't have
okay.
worked at the time. I mean, he's getting through a line of people
I know,
who are there signing stuff.
Next.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it does go to show that it just depends on utilization, right? Like, I think Kenneth Walker caught like all of one pass when he was at Michigan State, but he can do it. He can catch passes. It's just sometimes you need the opportunity to show that you can do it.
And there's a lot of different offensive systems in college football. I mean, they run a lot of, there's traditional old school NFL style offenses out there. There's the wide open spreads and everything in between. I mean, even at the time, I think Charbonnet was still at Michigan. They're just going into that transition of starting to get Harbaugh out of that 80s, offense mentality into more of what was going on in college football as they now have with their offense, which is why, to Garth's comment, it's funny because that's so true. You got Harbaugh running that old school, and you just blood and guts run the running back like you used to with Frank Gore there in San Francisco, right up over that, like with Carroll, over the A gap, power runs all day. Let's wear them down, boys. And then you go to Chip Kelly, it's a lot of outside stuff, and let's get him the ball out in space. And he showed he could do both. And what's nice about him, he's got so much production he brought to Charbonnet. This is not a running back that you have really any questions about his ability, I think, to be a productive back. I don't know if he'll be a star back in this league or a guy that's going to go out there and light the world on fire at one time. I don't know if he's going to have the kind of star power potential a Walker guy like kind of does have in my mind, but he's going to be a very useful back in this league and very helpful in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, that's the pick that I think most Seahawks fans were genuinely like unhappy about. Like some people would say the Witherspoon thing, but most of the people at the time of the pick did acknowledge that, hey, Witherspoon's a great player.
Yeah.
Nowadays you don't see that as much because he's been hurt, but the Charbonnet pick was the one pick that I think people were really kind of upset about. But I think once they start to see him play when the season starts, it's going to be pretty easy to get past that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I heard the same thing, and I think you would agree that a lot of that came then from also those people that had been also disappointed by going for Walker the previous year. So they were already kind of like, okay, second round pick, here we got. We don't need running back now. We're fine. No, not again. They're getting hit again when they're one of those tried and true folks who say you never take a running back, but fifth round in onwards. These folks are I'm not knocking y'all, but y'all are a very devout people in your belief in this. You know what I mean? Like, you guys own it to 100% of a degree. And if anything short of it definitely will rankle you a bit as far as getting annoyed by it. But yeah, you're right. That was the one that everybody was like, how, why, for what, for who, and as you say, I think he's going to show people, he's going to go together with that thunder and lightning combo that you got between him and Kenneth Walker, where he gets to hopefully, you're right about there's still going to be some A-gap runs with Walker, but hopefully Charbonnet now at least starts to remove some of those short yardage situations that are not what Walker does at his best. And frankly, that do get running backs worn down of Walker's type and ilk. This is why the Packers went out and made a second round pick of an A.J. Dillon when they already had Aaron Jones there. It's a sort of a similar sort of situation with that, where you're just looking to lighten that load and that part of it specifically. And it's helped for Aaron Jones. I mean, he's still been able to be a back that is on the contract they gave him, been pretty productive for them.
Right. I will say, though, I do think people are going to be okay with Charbonnet once he starts playing. I do wonder if there was another way to address that running back need. I still do. I think that's a very valid point. A lot of people say, I wish instead of taking Charbonnet in the second, you took Roschon Johnson in the fourth. And I actually agree with that. I love Roschon. I
do too. No, I definitely do as well. I think that this certainly does speak to how much the coach or in the front office liked Charbonnet too, that how much they really did think of him over the top of a Roschon, because they definitely there's the full skill set involved here. Whereas with Roschon Johnson, are you getting a guy with the hands out of the backfield and, the ability to be as much he can become our third down back, or is he just more of it's a bell cow or a third down kind of guy. Not to say that that's what he was, but maybe the front office had more of a question in their mind of that. That's who he was. To me, Brendan, he goes out there and he does like he did in that Viking game with a couple of different moments where he got his hands in the ball and he got that in space coming downhill. Defender come up there and they bounced off of him, like you see sometimes in those Pee Wee leagues where you get the kid who's, 210 at 9. And somebody's put him in at running back in the Pee Wee leagues and he's out there in the open field and just blasting people. It's a little bit like that. It's a little bit of the equivalency for me with that of what you get with Charbonnet, where he's got a bit of that beast mode power to him. When he hits a guy and puts those shoulders down, defensive back, safeties, that's going to get people so hyped up when they see it like it did with beast mode that will be the thing that probably ends up starting to get them. Because watch that tape. Like those, we haven't had a running back, Carson, beast mode. Those running backs we've had in recent years have had guys bounce off them like that when you go up to try to tackle them, where they put their head down, they're being violent. It's not merely that they're being strong and they're pulling the pile forward. Like DJ Dallas can push a pile forward, but I'm talking about you get me open the field and you're coming up one-on-one with me. I'm gonna put my head down and run you over, and it's gonna hurt, and you're gonna start making business decisions. He's got that part of his game. And I know Roschon does too, that's why I think that is a great comp where it's like to go later on. You're on the button with that one, Brendan, as far as like, maybe there's a little bit more of a value-based way to go there, but there's also a lot of more production and background to go off of with Charbonnet and making that determination. Whereas Roschon, there is a bit of a question mark. He was a backup, didn't have the number of kind of carries that you have to go off of with Charbonnet and what you're getting. I think Charbonnet is a more creative runner too. I think
he is.
Roschon's a hammer, and he's a blunt force he's a blunt force instrument. Charbonnet is more of a creative. I can read things and feel things way better on a different level, I think.
Let's see here. Jaden Sonoria, thank you for the $2. Confidence in our coordinators this year. Well, you go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, Brendan. Throw me a softball, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Waldron's great. Waldron, a confidence level in him. He's been here 2 years. He fully unleashed his offensive playbook and arsenal last week. He showed an ability to be creative in his approach. He moved guys around. He was better with the pre-snap motion and the post-snap motion. He did a better job of attacking weaknesses of defenses. I like that he was also up against it a little bit with Waldron last year, where he really didn't have a slot receiver to work with throughout the course of the season. And yet he found a way not to have that hinder the offense and yet lean then into the 2 and the 3 tight end sets. And that's despite, I think, a natural inclination on his part to want, frankly, the 3 wide receiver sets, Brendan. I think we're going to see so much more of that this year, and that's what he's wanted from the start here. That's why you took Eskridge in that first draft when you first picked up Waldron. That was a signal of Waldron to Carroll to say, okay, this is the guy I need. I need this type of guy as a slot receiver in this offense to make it work, like what we had with Kupp when I was with the Rams. And so he was able to work around not being able to run his offense from an optimal fashion. And that gives me a ton of confidence in this guy in the second year, taking Gino where he took him, which is to help to take him to the high of heights. Of course, that's on Gino as well. Having 3 rookies starting on the offensive side of the ball and getting the returns that you got as well, in addition to it. So all the way great. Now, when it comes to Mr. Hurt, I'm going to go ahead and just give you, Jaden, a big fat, I don't really know what to say on that one. And my reasoning is because I don't really know where this defense begins and where Coach Carroll ends. I know the defense is his baby. I know he's hired in-house his last 3 hires for this defensive coordinator position. I know the past 2 coordinators got hit as patsies for all of the ails of our defense and fired because of it. I don't know what to really think, though, on the situation right now. Maybe Brendan can hopefully provide me some beautiful enlightenment on this one, because I tend to fall in line with saying it's hard for me to blame much of anything on any defensive coordinator here. I sort of hitch him together with Carroll, and their successes and their failures are married together.
Yeah, I don't think Hurt really matters. I like that. To me, that's just kind of like it's like when, those teams that had Wade Phillips as their head coach, and then they would have a defensive coordinator, but the defensive coordinator wasn't actually doing anything.
Yeah. Or at the very least that they're not able to, you can't, to me, you can't talk about confidence or putting blame, whether it be praise or blame, if you're not exactly sure of how much this guy's being both hindered and helped. All coaches are going to help their coordinators out, but do you have a coach that's so hands-on that they're basically, like you say, taking control like they're the defensive coordinator? We see offensive head coaches out there that do this as well, right? This also happens on, it's not just a Carroll thing. This can be a thing that you see in football and other places as well. But the history here, and given the fact that we at times want to come back to the defensive coordinator here, I'm Jaden. I'm really reticent to do that just because we've been down that pathway to say, do I have that confidence or not? Well, I don't know. I don't know what that guy quite fully, does. He wasn't good last year on the performative level. You'd say, well, but he like Waldron, he was starting three rookies on the side of the ball. Maybe we should take that into account. And the fact you had definitely you just lost Bobby. You didn't have a lot of leaders. Quandre coming after the foot injury. Jamal, his best defensive player, out at the start of the year. I think there's a lot of explanation why the first year didn't go good. And Waldron's first year didn't go particularly well. But that's also where I think we'll get some room for growth from him in whatever impact he has. But as Brendan says, this is a little bit tough to figure out. Players, you can say too, well, Brendan's being harsh there, or I'm being harsh in this and saying it's Carroll's defense, but the former players have told us this as well. There's been multiple interviews where these guys get asked about it, and they all point back to it's the guy upstairs defense. That's who has ownership of this thing at the end of the day. And these are the defenders saying this. This isn't offensive players saying this. It's the defensive players who played under Carroll saying this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I mean, Waldron's obviously fine. I don't think anything needs to be said there. He's done a great job. But Hurt, I just don't really care.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. We're going to be driven by offense. Just get us to 15, Clint. Have us not be historically bad, as we've had a couple times in recent years. We've been on historically bad paces where there's times that looks like your defense couldn't stop, a cold blow of air. It's get that down to a place where this is workable for every game, where teams can't, like last year, the problem we just run on them. We just run on them. And it won't be, we don't have to do anything else. We just go right down their throat. They can't stop it. Like, find an answer for it. And if that stuff happens again this year, Brendan, if they start out this year again, go to the 4-3. I get it figured out. Do not have a season here where you have a top 3 offense, a top 3 defense, and you have a back end defense, and you're like, well, we're just committed to this 3-4 alignment change thing. We got to do this 3-4 thing. I think it will work. So this is all null and void argument, really. But
yeah, it'll work okay. Okay, so now let's move on to pass catchers, receivers. This one's interesting. I think we might be the only team in the league where you could have a poll asking who do you think is going to lead the team in receiving, and like 3 guys get a pretty big share of the vote. I think most other teams know who's going to be their leading receiver, or maybe there's a little bit of a debate between 2 guys, but we have a debate between 3 guys. That's uncommon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very, very uncommon. Yeah, and equal argument being made down the line too, right? Right. If you did a poll, you could easily get it to a probably 33%, point on it.
Yeah, I think Field Goals did a poll earlier this offseason, and I think everybody got at least 20%. So that's pretty good.
Right. So it fits the form. Yeah.
Okay. So I have DK Metcalf leading the team in receiving. I know it's not set up perfectly for him. I know it's not the perfect offense for his skill set, but he's clearly good enough, I think, to improve on last year's performance. And I do think he leads the team in all 3 categories. I have 84 catches, 1,204 yards, and 11 touchdowns for Metcalf.
What was the yards you had for him?
1,204.
Okay. So I've got 82 receptions for him, 1,300 yards, and 12 touchdowns.
All right, pretty close.
I do think he's going to have finally some pulling off of, and partly for the guy we'll be talking about a sec below him, but I do think he's going to get a little bit of attention pulled off of him this year. Gino and him having their chemistry continue to come together. With quarterback and receiver can sometimes take hopefully a couple of years to get those guys completely to that psychic, telepathic phase of things that they can be on as far as reading things on the football field. But yeah, I like that right there.
All right. So second place, I am kind of getting into the hype here. It's hard to not get into the hype with everything that's happened this offseason. Jackson Smith-Njigba. JSN. I have him as our second leading receiver. 70 catches, 919 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
We're pretty close on this. I have him as our leading receiver as far as total catches go. 84 catches this year on 1,000 yards. and 5 touchdowns. I think he's going to be worked heavy. There's going to be a lot of times early on in the season, especially Gino's going to drop back and he's going to see all this attention out there on DK and Tyler. And very early on in the year, JSN's going to have a lot of chance to really, really feast, I think, for how much open space there's going to be underneath for him.
Right. Tyler Lockett, I do think this is the year his production goes down. I don't think his efficiency is going to go down that much. He's still going to get open. He's still going to do his job. But I think that the addition of JSN means the catches have to come from somewhere. And I think it comes out of Lockett a little bit. I have 69 catches, 760 yards, and 8 touchdowns.
I think he'll still be probably to me a pretty big play guy from time to time where he's just guys that he'll find a way to get loose, and deep a couple of times, 5, 6, 7 times a game 7 times a year where he's going to get over the top of a defense. Especially because a lot of the attention will be pulled away from him, I think, at times where he's going to get some one-on-ones this year, like DK. I still have you right around the same mark, though, man. 65 receptions, 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. So I just have him right where you're at, just a little bit more, maybe yards per catch or, on that, or yards per catch, I think, than you have on it. But we're right around the same kind of place on that marker.
So those are the top 3. Pretty formidable top 3. In 4th place, I have Noah Fant. Can't forget about him. He's a gamer. I think that we all kind of forget about Noah Fant at times. We kind of dismiss him a little bit, but he's definitely going to do some stuff in this offense. We still like tight ends. We're still going to use tight ends a pretty decent amount.
100%.
So I went with 41 catches, 499 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, well, we're right along the same spot. And looking at Fant too, a guy that is in the 4 years he's played as a tight end in this league, and not always in great offenses. 562 yards, 673 yards, 670 yards, and 486 yards are over his 4 seasons. So the 46 actually last year was a kind of a league low spot for him. But nonetheless, I'm still going to put him kind of right in that mark. 45 receptions, 480 yards for him next year. This upcoming season, I should say. So 5 less receptions, 6 less yards. But that's only because you just have so many other guys that you're looking to get, the ball to. And I do think that's going to come at the expense of a little bit of, I think Colby Parkinson gets a couple more catches than he got last year. Like some of that will go to, I think, him just a little bit. Not that Colby overtakes Fant as tight end 1, but just they'll work Parkinson in a little bit. They were at the end of the year. He was getting more snaps than Fant at times in games.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's our top tight end. We both agree that he's still going to lead the team in tight end catches at least, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. This one, I don't know about right now, but I really do feel like Charbonnet becomes the third down back sooner rather than later. He showed in the preseason that he can block. He got really good blocking scores on all the preseason games he played, and he's a good pass catcher. So I think a lot of his offensive production is going to come here. I went with 32 catches, 244 yards, and a touchdown.
Oh, wow. Okay. I go 18 catches and 138 yards. I like using a different. So I'll go 18 carries, 138 yards.
Mm-hmm. And then I had Ken Walker, who's very close. I don't think he'll be the third down back, but I think he'll catch a lot of passes because he's going to be on the field a lot, of course. I think that's pretty self-explanatory why just being out there a lot means you catch a lot of passes. 31 catches, 249 yards, 1 touchdown.
I did agree with you on that, where I did have him as getting some more catches, because I think they're going to run a little bit more of the screen game on early downs too. So there's going to be a little bit more of going to that at times, I think. So I had him at 25 catches for the season and 215 yards.
All right. Pretty close.
Yeah.
Next for me was Will Dissly. Definitely a diminished role, less 3 tight end stuff, less 2 tight end stuff, but still going to do some stuff. We're paying him too much money to not do something. Going to be a lot of blocking, but I went with 18 catches for 202 touchdowns.
And I've got the 2 touchdowns as well. 22 catches for me, 220. So as you say, a little bit of a reduced role, but still, in there a little bit.
Yeah, because of the blocking thing, I'm not convinced Colby's going to pass him yet. I think that Colby is still tight end 3. So I don't know how much Colby's going to get out there unless there's an injury. So I went conservative with him. I did 15 catches for 211 yards and 1 touchdown.
Oh, you got to be in big play though when he made with those catches. I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm 20 for 195 and 4 tutties. I think he
Mhm.
becomes more of a red zone threat. I think what does hurt, even those tight ends are all going to be rolling strong and they're all really good. I think we have to acknowledge what's going to be tough for them here is that you're going to run more 3 wide receiver sets, which is going to pull guys off the field who probably played a little bit more last year. But specifically, as we talked about, a guy like a Will Disley.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let me see here. Next up, I did originally have Derek Young, but the injury has kind of made me reevaluate things just a little bit. So with Derek Young now, with what we know, I think he comes back eventually, but I gave him 6 catches for 76 yards. Not much, just occasional chip in.
Yeah, I do like 10. I think you'll get 10 catches because I do think when you break this all down, he's the guy that ends up getting on the field as number 4 when it's all said and done over anybody else, because I think that the team's going to trust him better in the blocking element of things than Eskridge. And like we talked about, who the hell knows what we're getting out of Eskridge. So I'd probably go like maybe even 50. I'm going to go 15 catches with him and 125, 100 and I think he makes one big play down the field too. So 15 catches, 140 yards on the year for Derek Young.
Yeah. I originally had Eskridge here, but I'm starting to really just like the idea of he never gets on the field. It's starting to line up to me that it's just not going to happen. So I'm going to go with Bobo here, obviously a late addition.
Let's go.
And, that first game, he might get to play a lot because of the injury thing. He might get to play quite a bit as the season goes on just because we like him. We find situations for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go a little bit brave here. I'm going to go 21 catches for 262 yards.
I'm not going to let you out. I'm not letting you outdo me on this one. I'm not letting you do me on the Bobo hype, Brendan. I'm not letting you do that. No. I'm going 24 catches, 360 yards for the Bobo Mania.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Price is Right. I'm going to go, what was yours? I'm going to go 201.
I did 21 for 262.
All right, I'm going 263. I'm going 22 for 263. No, I like it. I'll go 24 for 360. And my reasoning on this, Brendan, is not to be silly. It's like you say, we've got now confirmation here that Derek Young is going to be out for, I would guess, at least the first 4 weeks of the season, if not more so. Eskridge is not going to be back. This is your 4th wide receiver. If you have any injury at all over the course of the first 4 games, he's going to be out there, even if it's a guy just getting winded. And I think that if he gets out there, he's going to find his way open. And if he finds his way open, he's going to make some catches. And as he showed in the preseason, he can certainly get over the top of the defense.
Okay, so that is most of the stuff. There's a couple players left that I want to throw in here. There's McIntosh. When he does get on the field, he is probably going to do quite a bit of his damage catching. But with the injury possibly being serious and with the nature of this team being kind of loaded at the skill positions, I'm just not convinced there's room for him to do much. So I just went with 6 catches for 78 yards.
Yeah, I would probably, if we can maybe just parse our deals on this, I would probably really wrap in like my production of Derek Young and Bobo. I might just sort of wrap it in between that combination with Eskridge and McIntosh. Like all of those guys together put up basically, from my perspective, 500 cumulative yards on the season. And however that kind of goes together, but those are kind of those guys in that weird group where everything's just kind of that collection of stuff to get to that part where I think guys have a game here, game there, quarter here where they kind of, do something. But I do think you're right. McIntosh is going to get some touches on this team. And like I said earlier, I think a lot will come from fly sweeps, but I also think Brendan also from that alignment, a few of those will probably come from the bubble screen game too, because you can do both things with him in there at that point.
Right.
So I think he gets a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm. I have DJ Dallas. Now, if he does end up being the 3rd down back, this is not going to be the case, but I'm assuming he's just kind of the 4th string guy. I got 4 catches for 20 yards.
That's probably what I put him at. If Sharps is going to be mainly that guy, he'd be my 18 for 138 guy. But if it is going to be Dallas, he'd be my 18 for 138 guy. You could flip flop either role depending on who gets the snaps to do it.
Mm-hmm. And finally, I had Cade Johnson with 3 catches for 11 yards.
I don't see him ever being on the active roster.
Okay, then you can probably swap Cody Thompson in there because
that works
For the moment, he's there.
Yeah.
I still like Cade, and I feel like if JSN's going to miss time, he's a pretty valid selection to be like a replacement slot. But yeah, it doesn't really matter too much either way.
I liked Cade a lot coming out. I just haven't been as impressed with him with what I've seen from him on the football field.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. I gotta have more Bobo, baby. Said like Christopher Walken.
Give me more Bobo now, please. I need it. More. Throw him the ball. Why? Because he's good. He'll catch it whenever you throw it. He's good in that way. Now. Walken loves Bobo, man.
Yeah, I like that. I can get behind that. I appreciate that.
First string, I don't need DK. He's good, but he's no Bobo.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's somebody who I kind of had to sub in late as somebody who was going to catch some passes this year. And with each week that goes by, he just continues to exceed expectations. So at this point, you got to like his odds to make a real impact.
You do. I think you're going to call upon the fourth wide receiver here in this first opening 6-week stretch at some point. And not maybe a lot, but I think at least a little bit. And, he also does give you an interesting guy that you can kind of counter in there just from a kind of being tactical, because the thing that stood out to me, Brendan, and maybe see if you agree, is that the UCLA tape, the thing that the people, as much as they love what they've seen from Bobo so far, and it has been impressive, you haven't even really gotten to see what maybe is one of the best skills and traits he has, which is being so dynamic down there in the red zone as a big slot and being the kind of guy that, Gino can just throw it on his body. And he's such a big body that the defender can't get through to him to the ball at times, especially when he's doing that cut stuff off the stem of his route. And that was all over his UCLA tape and a lot of his touchdown catches, just defenders across from him, runs right at the defender straight at him, and then he's cutting left or he's cutting right. He feels the leverage. It's an option route, I'm pretty sure, at times with him and DTR. And DTR's got to read it as well at the same time, but there's not a lot the defender can do. If the defender takes outside leverage and he goes inside, he has such a big body and it's such a short throw, right? With so much, it's such a bang, bang play. You don't have enough time to regroup to get back or through that big body to the ball. And he can catch it out away from his body. So even as you're getting your hands in there, he's catching it out like this, So that's the part that could show up, if they want to have like a red zone package in there with him. I'd freak some teams out. You go out there with DK, you go out there with Colby, you bring out Jake Bobo as well. You just got all these giants out on the football field on the outside to pass catchers.
Yeah, it's hard to deal with.
There's a 5'9" corner somewhere out there trying to guard somebody. That's all I'm saying.
It's Hoof. Thank you for the member message. Member for 28 months. Very solid impression, Brandon. Now let's hear it from you, Brendan. That's not going to happen.
Brandon, where's my walking? I need to hear now, please.
The impression stuff is pretty good. I remember, there was one really good one there was one point where I was pretty good at the Werner Herzog, but then one day I just lost it.
It does happen. I had a couple when I was younger that I could do better, and I try to call upon them now, and they're just it's sad. So
yeah,
it goes away with time.
Yeah, like you could do the Werner Herzog audition tape for The Mandalorian. And it's just like reading Jar Jar Binks lines in Werner Herzog's voice. It always slayed, but I lost it like a couple years ago.
It's awesome. It's such like the idealized, like kind of German voice. It's not quite German, right? It's like in the Norwegian sort of it's got that Northern European kind of feel to it. You're not quite sure which country it is.
Yeah, it's great.
I always loved it with him on Grizzly Man narrating, And that's when he learned that it was wrong where he was going.
Yeah. He ate a shoe one time.
He's got some wild stories. Like I had a thing with I had like a thumbnail come up my YouTube the other day with him and Klaus Klaczynski like about to kill each other on a set. I think there was another set where you remember Rip Taylor? Him and Rip Taylor got in like a fist fight on the set, and they got it on film of like them going at it, like over the character or something. Rip Taylor's just so into it. Yeah, it's
okay. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, go check out the clip. It's pretty funny to watch. And I think Rip at that time was probably he's pretty up in the clouds. You know what I mean? Like he was probably floating a little bit at that time.
Yeah, he made a bet with another director. He was like, if you make this movie, it was like a movie the other guy was trying to make, and Warner was like, you're never going to make that movie. He's like, if you make that movie, I'll eat my shoe. And then he made the movie. So he boiled his shoe in like boiling water and had it like seasoned and then ate it. He didn't eat the sole because that's basically impossible, but he ate everything else.
That's why you don't make bets, man. You just don't. It's not worth. There's not the win is never there for those kind of bets. You know, what's the upshot if you're right? You know what
I mean? Jeff Speak, thank you for the $10 super chat. I hope Shane Waldron has been watching Gino's film to switch things up just a little bit. Best believe that the rest of the league has been looking at his tendencies as well. Go Hawks.
Solid point. I don't think that I would push back against any of that, Jeff. I think that certainly having another year of tape they're going to take away some things that they saw that Gino liked last year. I think what stands out to me with the offense, when you look at things that you can take away from Seattle, is that they wanted to throw short or they wanted to throw deep. So, okay, can we as a defense idealize this now to where we can take away the deep stuff, take away the short, and then force them to try to throw intermediary? Here's where the part to me turns though in a nice way for our Hawks, Jeff, because you have an anticipation in the way you built this roster for the change in those tendencies. What I mean by that is the tendencies last year were 2 and 3 tight end sets, right? The tendency is short and deep. As I just spoke about, that was kind of the 1-2 note of this offense. Well, what did you do with your second first round pick? You went and got JSN. You've gone out there now and reinforced the slot situation in a way to where the slot doesn't completely leave your offense like it did last year. And now defenses have to now play that slot, but now you can also attack using that slot in a way that you couldn't last year, which was part of what drove you to be so short and deep. You know, that's why you had to operate that way. So I think that there's a little bit of this already been anticipated by the team, but it is going to be the place where, of course, Gino's going to have to answer that bell when teams do try to start to take away those things. I will say, Jeff, he wasn't a guy a little bit like in the nature of what you might have had with Russell in 2020 or other quarterbacks that are, doing kind of a one note thing. Yeah, it was short and long, but even that in itself is sort of two different things. It's hard to guard both short and deep. Like our Seahawks defense guards its tendencies to guard deep on plays, to drop to depth in coverage, but that then leaves holes open short. So we can get down to kind of a simplified place on this a little bit. It can get complicated and you can get into the minutia of it, but on a simplified basis, there aren't very many defenses that are fit and built to cover everything. And even in just the way they operated last year, I think they could still be effective that way. I'm saying that they're not going to do that, but I still think even then, I don't know. Am I wrong, Brendan? Is there a defense out there that exists that's going to take away both the deep pass and the short pass in order to force you intermediary? I mean, it's, I guess in theory, but I can't remember of a defense that even pushed in that realm.
According to DJ Reed, the Jets are going to be able to do that this year.
Yeah, he thinks they're the LOB. We're gonna be the new ones. Like, slow down.
80. He said 85 Bears and LOB, right?
Yeah, this always goes well too, doesn't it, for the defenses that start trying to talk themselves up as being those kind of defenses before they've actually reached that spot. Like the Legion of Boom wasn't talking about being the Bears. The Legion of Boom wasn't talking about being Tampa Bay when they were on their rise. They were just on their rise. They were just on their grind. They were just trying to become great. They weren't trying to we're going to be like them. It's a lot of wolf talk to me.
Yeah.
A lot of woofing. We'll see.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And as for this comment, I think it's really hard to not change your tendencies when you go from having Marquise Goodwin as your slot receiver to having JSN as your slot receiver. Goodwin's not even, I loved Goodwin, by the way. I'm not here to say negative things about him, but he's not even really a slot receiver.
No.
I think that alone changes things up significantly.
Agreed. And we're in the same place on this, Brendan, on that one. And you're not wrong with it, Jeff. It's just, I think that they have that. I think they've gotten the prescription here to get this kind of figured out on that other end of it to avoid that. And now, you start having JSN running free and clear. Think about Jeff too. This is that thing where I'm thinking he's going to be really productive early on, especially because you'll have those defenses leaning to those tendencies like I talked about. And that should then leave those big holes in the middle of these defenses if they try to do this.
Let's see here. Stephen A. Simmons, thank you for the $10 super chat as well. Last year, DK dropped a pass in the end zone and the announcer said, "That's not like him. Dude, obviously not from Washington State. Hashtag Tyler for president." 2024. Yeah. DK's never going to be able to outrun the fact that he dropped passes his rookie year. I feel like he's going to carry that forever.
It indeed is going to be something that is a narrative that has set in on DK at this point, Brendan, and it's one that's not leaving anytime soon. But you and I have seen it brought up a few different times, and it just is there. I think it makes it hard. I've say this: football is often a sport where you get caught up on these plays, Brendan, that stick in your mind on a player or a game. And that becomes the whole view of what you see in that player in the light of him a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it just becomes the thing you comes to mind, but that's just one play, outside the context of all of the plays around it and what they do. But at least as far as Steven, the data on this does state that if we look over the last couple of years, DK's not been a league leader in drop rates. He's been pretty good in that respect. He would seem to have shown some improvement in that respect as he's gone along in time. I'll give you that there's been some bad drops in there for sure, and in the end zone as well. I definitely, I can remember those in my mind and quite a different occasions, but it is pretty, when I've tried to go and look at myself on this, Steven, to see if it sort of confirms a confirmation bias for my own self of, is there a thing here with drops or not? And you go and you do look at the data, and it is pretty easy to tell in a receiver if they're catching a ball or not. If a ball hits you in the hands and you drop it, that's a drop. If you catch it, you catch it, right? It's not like one of those subjective stats like turnover worthy plays, for instance, in my opinion. And the stats seem to indicate here, Steven, that for a guy that's as targeted as often as he is, one of the more higher guys targeted in the league as far as receivers, I think probably well over 130 targets last year, Brendan. Does not the data show that at least over the last 3 years, he's been fine. It's not been league worst, league bad.
No,
worst of the worst,
bad of the really bad at all. No, I don't think so at all.
But I will admit, Steven, I'm a big what some would probably call a DK apologist with this, where I think he's on his rise. I think he's about to have his best season as a Crow. I think he's been awesome for us in every respect up until this point. He's not perfect, but he's been magnificent from my perspective of things. I've loved watching his game. He's made football games funner, and his presence out there makes it harder on defenses than not.
Let's see here. Megan, thank you for the $20 Australian. Hey, 12s and B squared. Loving this team. So damn excited for whatever happens this year. We are 12. Hear us roar.
I love the emoji there. First time I'd seen that on there, Megan. That's awesome.
Oh, you mean the profile picture?
Yeah, the profile pic.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Very nice.
Very nice.
Awesome. All right. But yeah, Megan, I echo those sentiments. I can't really add too much to that.
Nor can I with this, Megan. I'm in the same boat where I'm super excited for this upcoming season, and it's as excited as I've been in years. And there's been times where you could just kind of see, well, this is going to maybe get topped out. We're going to need a lot of things breaking in our direction, right, for anything to be hopeful here. But this year seems to be, sky is the limit of hope in our consideration of it. So I'm right there with you. I can't wait till this Sunday. I can't wait for the season to start. And this team is going to be so much fun to watch, I think, like they were last year. Such an entertaining season last season to watch, on top of being a productive and a winning one. It was an entertaining one, too, on top of it. And I think that's going to be the same again this year with this squad.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Killer Bees, Renown Rivers PNW wants to know if you currently prefer DK or AJ Brown on the Hawks. Well, I think AJ Brown's a little bit better, but if you're asking, like, if you're taking this question at face value, like, do you want to mess with the chemistry that Gino and DK have built up over the last couple of years? So would I swap them out? Probably not, but I do think AJ Brown's a little bit better of a player. Like, he put up 1,500 yards last year playing with Jalen Hurts on a run-first team. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I make a little bit of a different opinion on this one, just to a degree. And definitely last year he put up the yards he did, which was really a boost. But if you do look at AJ Brown through his first 3 years of his career, Brendan, before he got to Philadelphia, he was right in the same place that basically DK was at, as far as his level of production goes. And, the one thing that he got last year that DK does not get, or has not been afforded yet in his career, was he got a lot of single coverage. He got a lot of times where at that point you're bringing guys down the box. And in fact, I know for a fact in researching and looking at the Eagles offense that one of the big things they do on offense is the simplified read. That's why I call it a simplified offense. It's all very simple. Jalen, you come down into the box and you got 8 guys. You've got single coverage on the outside somewhere. Go attack that. You got a 7-man box, run into that. That's what we're going to do. And there's more stuff they're doing beyond this, but there's a lot of that just kind of already pre-baked into what they're doing offensively. So I would argue with you, you've never seen AJ Brown be one of the league leaders in double team percentages in his career. You
That's
have
true.
seen that of DK Metcalf. And I think that if you were to go around the league and ask defensive coordinators who puts more fear in your heart, who are you more likely to double team? The answer would be overall more towards DK than it would be to AJ Brown. My opinion is I like DK better. DK is also a better run blocker. I just prefer him. I love DK. AJ Brown's a great player, and they're, like you say, they are closer than they are farther apart. But I'll take DK.
Yeah. And also, while we're here talking, because we were just talking a little bit about drops, like I think that AJ Brown drops just as many passes as DK does. I remember in 2021, I watched 2 Titans games that year, the game against the Seahawks and the game against the Rams, and he dropped 5 passes in those games alone. So understand that a lot of these top guys are dropping passes like that. I think McLaurin's dropping passes like that. I think that Debo's dropping passes like that. A lot of these top guys they drop the occasional pass.
They really do. I mean, it does come with it. It's something you don't want to have to be an epidemic of a problem, but it's not the worst. I mean, you mentioned this too. I'm just bringing this up from last season, which is funny on this, Brendan. DK had 7 drops last year, according to the stats I'm looking at right now. AJ Brown had 6.
Right.
And that's on DK being targeted 141 times, and that's on AJ Brown being targeted 145 times.
Very close.
But the narrative, here's where we're with narratives, Brendan, because the narrative is that AJ Brown's got sticky hands. The narrative is that AJ Brown doesn't drop nothing.
Yeah.
And that's
is CeeDee Lamb near the top of that list? Because he had awful hands as recently as like last year, I think. Like that's another top receiver that drops a lot of passes.
Mm-hmm. Let me double check here. What's that? Bring up. I think I did see it. They don't got him in there. Yeah, they do. They've got him at 6.
Okay. So again, they're all kind of hanging around that same area. And PFF had Metcalf, I think it was either 5 or 6 drops. So right, whatever metric you want to use, they're all right around there. Like remember Daryl Jackson? That guy would drop a pass a game. Then it's kind of a problem. But
well, that's also why I get a little bit, I guess, bristled a little bit about DK drop part. Is I lived through the era of, it was like 2002 to 2006. And our receiving core got some kind of weird thing that they all just could not catch suddenly. Corn had the problem. Daryl would have the problem. They'd have certain games where they were like, they look like the new Largent, where you're just like, they catch everything. It'd be just these high difficulty. And then they'd have next games where you'd come back and it was drop city all over the place. We led the league in drops in that time a couple times over in that during those Holmgren years.
Yeah, we did.
And those were guys that's where it's miserable. That's where it's like, you should shade them. That's where they should be, come on, you're a receiver and you can't catch, but if it's down under 10 on a year for a guy that's got 140 targets, I think much like we would say, Brendan, earlier on Gino, where you say, okay, he's going to probably throw for 10 or 11 interceptions, but he's giving you the 4,700 yards. He's giving you the 34, 35 touchdown passes. It's not just merely the drops with that. It's also the productivity that you're getting on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving along here, we've got the offensive line. I actually did some statistical, quote unquote, predictions for the offensive line. I don't know if you did, but just in terms of like penalties, sacks, and pressures allowed. Okay. So
I hadn't done anything on that. So I'll give you, I got a Pro Bowler from the group, but I don't know.
Oh, really? Okay. I don't even have that. You got to hit me with that one.
All right. I see Abraham Lucas as being the Pro Bowler of this group. I think that Lane Johnson probably is elected, but doesn't go to the Pro Bowl. So this might be alternate. Me getting in by me getting in on kind of a technicality. Mm-hmm. But I think that he was already starting to have his reputation grow throughout the league by the season he had last year. And I think this year he just, reinforces that by being even better. And there isn't a lot of fantastic right tackles throughout the course of the NFC right now.
Yeah, well, let me think about this for a second. So Terrence Steele, who just got paid like crazy.
I think Lucas is better than Terrence Steele, or will be better when he gets to his realization of who he is.
Evan Brown on the Giants, do we think he's a bust yet?
No, but Lucas outplayed him last year.
Okay. That's true. He did. But Evan Neal, he's got that name and he's playing in New York. It's going to help.
And he's from Alabama. He's got the pedigree.
Taylor Decker in Detroit, I think, is still starting over there on that right side.
It's actually Penny Sewell, but you're probably right on your point with Penny Sewell being right, because Penny Sewell might be the
Wait,
best
Sewell's
right
on
tackle.
Decker's on the left side then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, they did that weird thing with him where they decided to put him on the right. So maybe he's right. Maybe he's right in there. He's gonna be right in. But I don't think there's anybody else.
Ryan
Packers
Ramczyk.
He's been falling back for a while now.
Mm.
He's not the same player he was a couple of years ago.
Tristan Wirfs
Coming back off that injury.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll be as strong. Maybe he will be, but not having Tampa Tom back there as well, like the quarterbacks are not going to make those Tampa Bay linemen look good. Certainly not Baker Mayfield.
Okay. Yeah, it could happen. Reasonable. Not expecting it. I had Cross allowing 5 sacks and giving up 39 pressures, both improvements over last year.
Mm-hmm.
Abe Lucas, 5 sacks allowed, 26 pressures. Little bit of an easier job over on the right side because Gino actually gets to see over there.
Yeah, I can see that.
Damian Lewis, 2 sacks and 14 pressures allowed. He's got things pretty locked down over there.
Indeed.
Phil Haynes was the kind of weak spot I had. 5 sacks, 34 pressures, which is really bad from a right guard. So I'm pretty down on him, admittedly.
He seems to pass protect better over on the left side than he does over on the right side for whatever weird reason.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know.
And then Evan Brown, centers usually don't give up pressures, so I just did 2 sacks, 11 pressures.
That's what they seem like if you go to PFF's board. That's what they all are at the end of the year. It's like 2 sacks, a couple pressures.
And that's what I had. I had a couple other things for like the tight ends and running backs, but that was the main stuff that I went through. I think it all seems pretty reasonable and fair. But that's like a top 20 offensive line, I think, at that point, if they can get there.
I certainly think they're going to be top 15 to me this year. I especially in pass protection.
I feel like they should be pretty close to that at the very least. I agree.
Yeah. I think they're going to be perform really well in that respect.
Let's see here. Chad Hart, thank you for the $1.99. Go Hawks and go Huskies. Yeah.
Oh, go Hawks, Chad. It's good to see you in the chat, man.
Yeah, Huskies look good on Saturday. They got a chance. I mean, this Pac-12, it might be the last year of the Pac-12, and right now they're going to make sure everybody remembers their name. They were the best conference in week 1.
If you're going to go out with a bang, man. Right. And so, I definitely, it's great to see Washington on top again, man. It's so cool that they're able to bring so many guys back with the NIL and be able to be one of those teams that was to benefit from that. Because if they do get to the playoffs and make some noise here, it'll be on the back of them bringing those guys back like they were, which would have been a rarity in other years. Those guys would have gone out in other years and other drafts. A lot of them would have, I think, at least. So they look good, man. That offense is explosive as hell.
Connor Olschlager, thank you for the $5. Next Gen had DK with 1 drop, and they account for the X completion percentage for each target. So a majority of his drops were difficult catches to begin with.
That adds up to my eye test again. I didn't think he had a lot of stuff that dropped out to me last year of really bad. There's like one in the New Orleans game and maybe one over. There was a deep ball, I think, maybe the Cardinals game. There's not.
He had at least one against Sauce in the Jets game.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of had the drop in the playoff game against the Niners, but he still caught it. It was the one where he caught it, dropped it, caught it again. I don't know how. Maybe these sites count that as a drop. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But it certainly wasn't a problem for him, and it's not going to be an issue. It's something he has gotten better with at times. Much like his route running, it's improved. And he was a very young player coming into this league. The guy is only still 25 years old. I don't think it's going to be an issue for him going forward, nor has it been.
Yeah, I don't blame people for expecting him to make difficult catches with the money he's making and the hype that he gets. But I also understand that part of the DK package is he does drop the occasional pass. If DK didn't drop passes, he would be on a much bigger contract and probably would have been a top 10 pick.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And that does factor into this, but yeah, people want him to become Calvin. They're looking for him to become Megatron. If he's not going to become that, it's like there's a disappointment involved there. But he's going to be a very good player. I've often said he's not Megatron. He's Terrell Owens. Right. And if you look at Terrell Owens' career, I think he's charting right along in the same way that Terrell did. In fact, Terrell probably had worse hands than DK does, to be honest with you.
He had some of the worst hands ever, honestly. He just made up for it.
He did.
And to my recollection, maybe he got better later, but I think initially he was a terrible route runner too. Like he was very, very raw. He just made up for it with raw physicality.
Yeah, he was just the guy that you were gonna. I mean, you get the ball in his hands. He could do a lot of the 9 routes where he was just gonna blow past you like DK does with that explosive speed, where it's just they're just kind of like they're running on a track next to the guy. Um, but yeah, it was route running and hands were never the greatest thing. He's just physical marvel, and he found a way through with it.
The snail, thank you for the $2. Lucas is an all-pro, Brandon. Don't sell the tubes short. I think he can be an all-pro in a couple years.
Mm-hmm. I think
Right
he's got that
now,
upside.
yeah, right now Lane Johnson has that reputation on lockdown. It's like when Kobe was getting all defensive votes when he wasn't even playing defense anymore, or I think you guys know what I'm talking about. These guys who have the reputation of being great, so they're considered great for 2 to 3 years longer than they actually are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it does happen. We're still going to be given that. So he'll get there, I think, eventually, though. Even if it's just second team all pro, he'll find his way up there eventually.
Okay, defensive line up next. We're switching over to the defense. You ready for this one?
We are. I did just sack numbers too, really. I didn't do really tackle based stuff as much.
Tackles are hard for defensive linemen, and it
Yeah,
doesn't even really tell you if the player's good sometimes.
exactly. That's why I was
Yeah.
thinking not to get too much into the weeds on that one.
Yeah, so I did do tackles for loss, though. So Dre'Mont Jones, I have getting 7 sacks and 10 tackles for loss.
Okay. I had him at 10 sacks.
Hmm.
I think he's going to go 16 tackles for loss.
All right.
I like his upside this year. I think he's like Uchenna last year, where you're getting him in here and he's still kind of in a slight ascending role. Not that he's going to go top out into some crazyville spot, but that he's still in a little bit of that ascent.
Right. I went a little low on a lot of these sack counts,
Okay.
partially because I think Jamal is going to come back and get quite a few. So I might end up regretting that one. I may end up getting hurt on that one again. I must admit I'm prepared for that possibility. But
It's hard. It makes it tougher to predict from that standpoint. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, if Jamal gets hurt again or isn't effective on the blitz, then I think that like all our edge rushers get their sacks to go up because there's just more sacks to go around, right? Like when you're racing Jamal Adams to the quarterback, it's hard to get a sack sometimes.
Absolutely. No, it could factor in, especially because we don't know how they're going to use Jamal in the blitz game side of it either. Is it coming from the inside? Is it all coming the outside? Is it, something that's going to be how that determines that.
Yeah. Jaron Reed playing nose tackle, but we saw in the preseason he can still bring a little bit of heat.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with 4 sacks and 6 tackles for loss.
Yeah, I had him at 3 sacks, but 3-4, that sounds about right.
Mhm.
So that's about right where I've got him too. He's playing nose tackle, so he's going to just have less opportunities to rush it. But like you said, we saw him preseason, he got himself a sack off that nose tackle spot. So he's got a way. He's got an understanding of how to get to the passer. That's for sure.
Right, so the third starting defensive lineman we have right now is Mario Edwards. I don't know how long he'll be starting, but for the moment he is. Um, I went with 4 sacks for Mario Edwards and 6 tackles for loss, basically the same as Reed.
I'd go with 3 sacks for him. And yeah, the tackle for losses, I'd agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think people sleep on Mario Edwards a little bit. I know he's not ideal as a starter, but I think he's pretty good.
I think he definitely brings a run stuffing element that we need to the team, and he's going to provide help there. And he gives you a little bit of pass rush. This is a guy wasn't he a former second round pick, so he's got some physical ability to him, And he was a good player for the Titans last year. He played strongly for them.
All right. So then if you move down the depth chart a little bit down to the second string defensive lineman, you've got, let's start with Mike Morris, who is in a little bit of a limbo right now, but he's practicing, so it can't be all bad, right?
Hey, it's closer than it is further away as far as that standpoint goes.
So for him, I just did.
I would do 2 sacks and probably 3 tackles for loss. I think he's going to be kind of finding his way inside there a little bit, learning kind of how to play inside a bit. And I think his snaps will be a little limited from within that. A guy like Miles Adams will probably be out there first and foremost ahead of him, especially with coming back from this injury.
All right. So speaking of Miles Adams, now we have Miles Adams, who's going to play more than I thought he was going to play this year because um, I thought that a guy like a Jonah Tavai would be pushing Miles Adams a little bit. I thought we were for sure going to bring in somebody like Shelby Harris tier. but it didn't happen. So Miles Adams has an important role to play on this defense, which I'm actually pretty excited about because I like Miles Adams.
I do
Fan.
too. I'm very hopeful for him. I wish he'd show a little bit more in the preseason, but he still had some moments in the preseason. And the guy, when he got his opportunities last year, which wasn't often, he's going to be in that Mike Morris role where it's like, well, you're not going to get used often, but when you do, take advantage of those chances you get. And Adams did that last year. So I do like a little bit of his upside here.
Yeah. So let's go with 2 sacks and 5 tackles for loss.
I would go with the same on that. I think again, this guy will play not a lot, but he'll be good out there in what he provides for when he's out there, I think.
Do you think Cam Young will get in on the quarterback at all in this season?
No, absolutely.
No sacks?
He has no pass rush ability. There is almost a negative to the pass rush ability of Cameron Young. I'm sorry, it is what it is with it. So he's unless the quarterback just runs into his arms, from the 1.5 foot space that he will be moving in from within the nose tackle position of his stance, there's no chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I gave him half a sack, though. Just by accident, it happens at some point.
You're being kind.
Yeah. Like maybe Nwosu pushes him all the way forward.
That's what it's going to take. It's going to be like Nwosu hits the quarterback. They bounce off. The quarterback stumbles, so Nwosu doesn't get credit, but then he just sort of stumbles right into the arms of Young.
All right, so that's everything on the roster for the defensive line. There's some guys on the practice squad, but who knows? So that's the defensive line. Let's see here. We got another dono. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Brendan, you can't say you're going to get hurt on a prediction regarding 33. He'll be on a stretcher in his 3rd game. I mean, it's possible. You got to live with that possibility, unfortunately.
You're not wrong. I'll say that. He ain't wrong about that.
Yeah, I wonder if we are going to do the load management with him. I wonder if he's going to sit out. Like, for instance, the thing with load management is you don't want your players playing back-to-back. So maybe we say, we don't want Jamal Adams playing Thursday night football because, it could be something like that where we just go, okay, there's only a 3-day break between Sunday and Thursday, so we're going to hold him out for our Thursday game on Thanksgiving, something like that.
I don't see, this is where I think, Brendan, it's smart to do so. Do you not believe this as well? Because this is the 17th game season. This is the 2 Thursday night games. This is all the extra kind of load that's at play here that wasn't there before. And that, if you have a guy miss a game or two during the course of the season, but it can make him fresher, why operate from this old school mentality that you have to get these guys out for every game because that's how the guys in the 80s did it. And that's how the guys in the 90s did it. And there's the whole thing of, well, these guys are softer now because they can't do it. Well, if it better preserves the body, if it makes the person fresher for a playoff run, then all the better. And I do believe that there's a load balance nature that's brought into play here with Jamal, at least early on this year. I think if they were really pressed up against it, if it was a playoff game tomorrow, Brendan, I bet Jamal could probably be able to go out there and play for you right now. I think what the team's done is they're saying, look, why go out there 17 games? You had a hard as hell time staying healthy here. Let's not try to get some magical thing that is really going to struggle to happen, having give a whole season of productivity. Let's dial this down to a set number of games, see if you can have maximum impact in those games and roll with that. And so first 4 weeks to me this season, you have him out, you have the bye week after week 4, then that's 5 extra weeks of heel time for him to just train and get right 100%. And then he bounces on the week 6, he's back out there and you're fresh legs for him to go down that stretch run of the season. Especially with Julian Love signing. I mean, that really does provide you, I think, that flexibility to do this.
Yeah, or you hold him out on the Sunday before the Thursday game since you probably want him out against the Niners. That's maybe the game of the year. But the point is you take it easy with him and understand that you're just trying to get him to play really well 11 times this year instead of getting him out there in some form 17 times this year.
Agreed. Yeah. Better count on that. I just, if you're going to take a wager on something, wager it on that with what you've dealt with, build into what you've seen out of him here. You can't just operate like that stuff hasn't happened or he hasn't gone through what he's gone through. You got to look at it a little differently, I think, from a team management load situation.
Okay, next up we have edge rushers. We got the edge rushers. Good crop. I like this edge rush room a lot. So let's start with Uchenna Nwosu, recently very, very wealthy man now.
Oh yeah.
I went with 9 sacks and 10 tackles for loss. I think his workload will be down because we're going to be a little more balanced this year. Like, remember at the end of the season last year, he was playing like 85, 90% of the snaps and he just ran out of gas. I don't think we're going to let that happen this year.
Yeah. I do think you're going to use him in that way, like you say, less. But this is where there's a little bit of the less is more thing, where now so many of those snaps last year were probably on him in moments of where him being gassed out, and where it's like really he'd be tapping his helmet and coming out there for a blow on this play, but you've got him out there, and so it's basically just a wasted rep where you have him out there, but he's not able. He's beat. And Uchenna's got a great motor. He's not a guy that shows you where he's not giving you 100% effort all the time, but that's just going to be inevitably what happens when you play a guy too many snaps. Is it will then affect, because I think what you're sort of inferring here, Brendan, if I'm not mistaken, is that you play these extra snaps, that's going to beef up your stats overall a little bit. If it doesn't help, if you're not, you might not be great in efficiency, but your overall stats will be beefed up, and that might be the case. But I wonder if not, maybe there's an efficiency point here that he's able to maximize now, even in having some of those snaps reduced down. So I have him at 11.5 sacks for the year and 12 tackles for loss for the year within that.
Okay. All right. So that's Nwosu. I have Mafe with the exact same numbers, 10 tackles for loss, 9 sacks. I think it's going to be really nice duo. And what I saw from Mafe this preseason sold me on him managing the same output as Nwosu.
I have Boye Mafe as leading this team in sacks.
Really?
12 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. Boye Mafe really needed, in one respect, they had one major thing. It was really kind of a pinpoint thing to improve upon this offseason, and that was the counters to the inside. The ability to not just allow these tackles to set up on everything on the outside to depth, and really then beyond that, Brendan, like load up for that swipe move that he wants to go to a lot. And then he went back to Minnesota all the time. And then he went to too much last year. It's the video I did of Hall today. He's got the long arm bull rush. He's got that the same kind of equivalent Mafe problem of like the move is so good that they end up overusing it. And so the moment that you get Boye Mafe recognizing how to get inside and have some counters back inside, and if you look at the pressures from the preseason and where he was getting his damage done, it was a lot on the counters and to the inside, crossing the face of the tackles. That's how he was getting it done. And this to me now opens the door for him to be mighty productive, unbelievably productive at this point, because now tackles can't cheat anywhere. Just like we also have, if you can't cheat, or you start to cheat one way, I can hit you with the counter to the other way. This is why pass rushers take some time to grow and become what they're going to become. But I love his upside here, and I think he's going to really flourish. It looks like he really attacked this offseason. He was maybe our best defender in all of the preseason. When the snaps he was out there, he was the most impressive.
Either him or Levi Bell, right?
Yeah, that's true. Him or Levi Bell. Difference, of course, being Boye was doing as a starter. Running out there. So love his upside, love where he's going, got him leading the team in sacks.
Okay. Darrell Taylor would be next. I think he loses a little bit of playing time because Mafe looks better, but still going to make a positive impact on this team. I went with 7 sacks and 6 tackles for loss.
I applied the same thing here really heavily. It could be that they end up finding some more snaps for him within this, but I think he's really going to struggle to get out there. I have him at 5 sacks and 4 tackle for losses. Tackle loss. I don't know why I keep saying it that way. 4 tackle for losses. It's such a weird way to term it. But 5 sacks. 5 sacks I got him down for. I just think he's going to get less bites this year than he did last year, and the team can't trust him on rundowns. So,
okay. Derek Hall, the rookie. Him, I just don't think there's going to be a ton left for him to eat. There's not going to be much food left. I really think this top edge room is going to clean up. So I just went with 2.5 sacks and 4 tackles for loss. And next year, when we may have moved off of Darrell Taylor, he can get promoted up to that first guy off the bench role, and I think probably become a really valuable player. But this year, I just don't think there's going to be opportunities.
And this is the guy that I do see as being a guy that overtakes Derek Hall or overtakes Darrell Taylor for some of his snaps. Here's where the main spot is that you see that overtake, and I think where that heats into that as well. When you look at the amount of snaps that Uchenna did run last year, like you mentioned, which was a tremendous amount, and Boye Mafe, who also himself, I believe, was out there for like 40% of the snaps, and then Darrell Taylor, who was also out there for still a good portion of the snaps last year, and there was still a good portion of snaps left over for a guy like Bruce Irvin. There were still snaps left over for that fourth edge on your roster. And so I think that will indeed, again, be the case this year, be it both just by the rotation and then also by the fact that one of these guys is going to get injured along the way. I also think that the common thing that separates this at the end of the day between him and Taylor is that in Derek Hall, you can trust him on rundowns. You can trust him on moments when offenses go out to run I formations or 2 tight end sets. You can take Hall out there and have him lined up. And now when it's not a run and he has to turn into a pass rusher on those plays, he's going to get more of those opportunities in those moments to go after the quarterback and amp up his sack and pressure rate production a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what did you have for sacks on Hall?
I had him at 5.
You had him at 5. All right. I mean, that would be great. I think if he got to 5, that would be very, very helpful for this team.
Especially for second rounders, because they tend to top at 4. So I'm thinking very highly of him for him to hit 5. It may not seem like a big mark, but I'm really shooting high here for Hall at that point and my outlook for him.
Last we have Tyreek Smith. I don't think there's going to be any food left for him.
No, I think
I went with half a sack and 1 tackle for loss.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be some garbage time at some point. There's going to be an injury, and then he gets to be the 4th edge guy. It could happen.
It could.
But it won't happen enough.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so that is the edge room. Obviously, Levi Bell could get promoted at some point, but honestly, that's a hard room to crack, even for a guy who played as well as Levi Bell did.
Agreed. I think it's going to be a tough sledding to get up there unless we have an injury epidemic.
Mm-hmm. The Snail, thank you for the $2 dono. Prez is winning comeback player of the year, haters.
Let's go, Snail. I love it.
If you bet on comeback player of the year this year and you're not betting on one specific player, you are earning money. We all know who's going to win it.
Yeah. He got 1 tackle and he's going to win it.
Yeah. There's a guy who all he has to do is play. All he has to do is play and he's going to get it.
Yeah. Well, what do you say if you're Prez? You're like, hey, I had a ligament tear off my bone. They had to surgically go in there and re-put it back on the bone, and I came out and I dominated. And then the other guy comes into it and be like, I died on a football field.
Yeah, he did. I mean, the world stopped for like a day. People were like, are we going to cancel the whole season? Are we going to like people were freaking out for a little bit over that one. So
yeah, they were.
And I can't even be mad about it. I really am shocked that his career isn't over.
I am too. I would have thought from a safety standpoint that there's future issues with having him go out there and do it, but I guess he's been cleared, or he's decided it's, as sometimes NFL players would say, like, I don't care. I'd die on this field. I love this game so much. I mean, maybe he's made that peace as well with this.
Yeah. The odds could not be low enough on, I'm not even going to say his name because everybody already knows who I'm talking about. That's how sure of a thing this is.
It's a very sure thing. Very, very, very much.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. The Snail, Jamal is plus 8,000 for comeback player of the year. Match your money with your mouth.
Yeah, I wouldn't take that bet, Snail. Don't go in on this one, man. This is a pass.
Yeah. They may as well hand out the award now. I think it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's
like the Alex Smith year when he broke his leg like 800 times and then
exactly. He didn't even have to play good. Just that he's out there playing. That he's not in a wheelchair. It's like, here's the comeback player of the year because you're not in a wheelchair. Here's the comeback player of the year because you're not 6 feet under.
Right. All right, linebackers. Let's do some inside linebacker stuff here real quick. Okay. Starting with the man himself, Bobby Wagner, back in the middle. He's going to put up some nice numbers. I kind of briefly touched on multiple categories here. I have 135 tackles, little less than last year, but still, he's getting his tackles pretty good. 7 for loss, which would be a big improvement over what he had done the last few years here in Seattle. I think that hopefully we learned something from what he was doing in LA, knifing into the backfield. So I went with 3 sacks as well for Bobby.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I've got 145 tackles. I'm going to go with, like you, the thing that stood out to me was that last year, boy, you had him going from 6, 7, 7, 3 to 10 tackle for losses with Los Angeles Rams. And you and I, of course, lamented through time here at times he wasn't, as it was getting winding down here in Seattle, making as many of those plays. Now he's in the Rams defense. As he showed last year, this seems to be a really good fit for him at this point. Also had 5 passes defense last year for a guy that's not supposed to be able to cover anymore, on top of a couple of interceptions. I do see him at 145 tackles. I see him at 4 sacks for the season. And I do see him at 2 interceptions as well for the year. But tackle for losses, I would say he's going to be about 8. I don't think we'll use him quite the same way Rams, but still very better than what he was the last 5 seasons in that realm in Seattle.
I also did 454 passing yards allowed, which would be better than what we had last year. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I go with that. That sounds right.
The other inside linebackers, it's really tough because we don't know who's going to play and how much they're going to play.
Yeah, 100. I mean, let's just take the combination. 120 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 interception, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Maybe like 2 tackle, 3 tackle for losses. I mean, something like that. I think would be about the combination of those two.
Yeah, the Bush-Brooks combo. I initially went almost 90 tackles for Bush because I thought Brooks was out for the season. But that didn't even come close to happening. So now I just don't know. I don't know if he's going to play week 1. It's really hard to say. And I think Drake Thomas picks up a few special teams tackles, but that's about it.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's those three. Those 3 are your middle linebackers for the year, absent something going really wrong.
Okay, cornerbacks now. Let's do some cornerback stuff. Let's start with Tariq Woolen himself. I went pretty bold here because I feel like the way this team is doing things is built around what he can do. Switching to man coverage, getting a guy like a Witherspoon across from him. I feel like he's going to have a pretty nice year this year. I went with 6 interceptions, 19 passes defensed, which is more than 1 a game, pretty crazy. And less than 50% completion percentage allowed. I had 35 completions on 73 targets and 480 yards allowed.
I don't think I'd go very much different off of any of your other stuff other than I think he gets to 8 interceptions this year. Because I think that they have found a way, like you say, in setting this up to where he's targeted and teams can't have games where they target him one time, as he did happen last year. That's been the big breadth of what you've tried to accomplish, I think, in some of the stuff you've done this offseason to create this situation, both improving the slot and potentially improving the outside, with Julian Love and Witherspoon, notably there. So I've got him at 8 picks this year, and I think he just continues to ascend.
Yeah, you think he can allow less than 50% completion?
Yes, I do, because I think that it's hard not to see him taking when he's had no technique last year, when so many pros, guys like Sherman himself, who I think knows a thing or two about corners, says, the guy's just out there doing it off athletic ability. It's insane to watch, quote unquote. Yeah. and you go, well, what happens when he starts to learn it? What happens when he starts to pick up the technique? And then the question would come in from a person that would be a naysayer, Brendan. They'd say, well, if he can, if he can learn the technique, can he? Maybe he's just rough and raw. And then you go, well, yeah, but then don't we still have Coach Carroll here? Isn't he still in the building? Yeah. So I think that's coming forward. You can make questions about Carroll in certain departments, but I don't think you can do it when it comes to developing cornerbacks.
In NFL history, how often have we seen a player peak their rookie season?
Running backs are the only position that really happens with, if it happens at all. And you're right, it doesn't happen all that much, but that's the only one you could maybe say you get a Thomas Rawls type that comes around but that's it. Not at corner, not with a guy like this, not unless there's some major injury or an explanation that you can apply as to how it happens. This whole it's one thing I'm starting to, and you hear with the Gino stuff too. It was a fluke. It was luck. It was, stuff doesn't happen in the NFL by luck or fluke. That's not the way it works. It really doesn't. There's been some hard work put involved. There's something more that goes into it than that.
Now let's list some things in NFL history that were flukes. Okay. The Holy Roller.
Yes.
Mile High Miracle.
Mm-hmm.
The helmet catch.
Yep.
The Immaculate. You see what I'm getting at? These are plays. A play can be a fluke, or a few plays can be a fluke. Yeah. A whole season cannot be a fluke. It's impossible.
No, right. It's possible. The NFL will expose you. If you're a guy that's just out there getting by, I'm like, well, I hope they don't throw my way over here and I can just maybe I'll just luckily jump this one route and then that'll make my day look good. I mean, that ain't the way the NFL is going to work. It's going to test you. It's going to try you. When you do something good, it's going to come back and adjust to that and take that away from you. And they're going to do that quick. It's not going to take them a long period of time. They got advanced scouts watching your games, studying your guys. They've got the analytics to go off of. I mean, it gets pretty hardcore in this respect of things. And so I go, no, there ain't no fluke here. The kid's legitimate. He's for real. And he's going to take that step forward this year.
All right. Oh yeah, we got one more here. Why, dude? Why? Thank you for the $2. Gino, one fourth quarter touchdown in 2022. More fourth quarter touchdowns equals a 12-5 season. Yeah, I mean, a big part of being a quarterback is getting it done at the end of a close game. And Gino did not do great in some of those situations last year. I didn't get on him for it really because he was making like $7 million last year. He was making peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think it was fair to say, okay, we're going to pay you this tiny amount of money. You have to carry the team. But now that he's the franchise guy, you are going to have to see something a little bit more. And I do expect to see something more.
Yeah. I mean, the touchdown in the fourth quarter is a tough one for me because it would be nice to have happen. But, what if you're running the ball out in the fourth quarter? What if you're still getting points in the fourth quarter and other, if just field goals, but you're generating points and he's being productive and moving offenses. It's always hard to come down those stats. You're right. I think why it would be nice if he can improve with that stuff. Let's take though, like the Atlanta game, because that would be a representatory spot of, okay, fourth quarter, you got to drive the team down, got to go get it, make it done. A lot of the failures last year, as you go in the fourth quarter where Gino's not coming back from the down by points in a fourth quarter, I think we can point a lot of those times to it also being that the defense was completely falling apart. And we get back to, again, the place of, I got to score every time in order to make this happen. Or you have a thing like the Atlanta game where you go down and help me remember this play sequence, if I'm not mistaken. He's driven you up the football field, right, Brendan? And now you're down there, and on I think, what is it, first down, you have a holding penalty, I believe. And then
we had first and goal. We had a big play to move the ball down to the 8-yard line, but it got called back. Damian Lewis holding. And I think the very next play, we single covered Grady Jarrett with Austin Blythe, and it ended the way you would expect.
So then we get, and I'd love to hear what you think on this. Why, where, then you get to the place on a play like that where technically he's done his job. He's down to a 3rd and 22. He has to get a touchdown to win the game because the defense can't hold up their end of the bargain against Marcus Mariota and the Atlanta Falcons and that offense. And he fails. He throws an interception. And, people have pointed to me on that of like, at the time they pointed at me. I've heard it mentioned many times over to me at times. Like, see, that shows that he can't get it done. See, so when the cards are down, that shows that Gino will fold. And it's like, well, that didn't seem to be really what happened there. And we probably have to go by game to make this, to see where this is on that a little bit of where can you think of where he's really failing in those fourth quarters, or where it was like a matter of him, like he's going strong and then suddenly like the pressure gets him and he starts to like, Gino, what just happened? You're going strong. Now you're going into your shell. Can you think of moments that occurred like that last year in those fourth quarters to you? Maybe I'm misremembering a little bit wrong, and that maybe there were more of these moments than I'm thinking about off the top of my head.
I mean, not really. There's like the Raiders game where we had the ball twice at the end of regulation and OT and he didn't score, but he led a touchdown drive to take the lead with 5 minutes left, and then the defense just gets blown off the field, even though the Raiders don't have the Raiders had no Hunter Renfrow or Darren Waller in that game, and it just didn't matter. So I can't really put that on him. I just can't.
Yeah. I think it'll be something to monitor, though. Why, to your point on that, let's track and see where this goes with him, because we don't have a lot of baseline data to go off of. And it may be something that we come to find out that is an issue there with him on that. It could be the case. It was nice in the Ram game to see him coming back on that one and winning that game on the road with a touchdown pass to DK on Jalen Ramsey. But it will be a part to track and keep an eye on here throughout the year.
Okay. Next cornerback I got here is Witherspoon, and in a little bit of a weird flux because we don't know how much he's going to play initially. But assuming that he does play a vast majority of the season, which I think is fair, we clearly like him and he's practicing right now. I went with 12 passes defensed, 3 interceptions, allows 42 catches on 75 targets for 500 yards.
I'm exactly about where you're at on it. I didn't do as much the pass defense in advance on this, just but I did the 3 interceptions where I see as well with him. I just have to think that even though you have Julian Love and you're going to try to put him in the slot and you're going to have Adams then sometimes move down in there and you're going to move a lot of those guys. It's your 5th overall pick. Once he's healthy, the coaching staff's going to want to find ways to get this guy on the field somehow, some way. And we'll see how that happens, but he'll find his way out there, in my opinion.
Trey Brown, now that we know he's starting for the moment, and he's probably going to play a decent amount even when Witherspoon is here, I went with 2 picks, 9 passes defensed, and 38 completions on 59 targets for 590 yards.
I would probably go a little higher on the yards given up, because I think that Trey Brown's going to be the guy that gets, unfortunately, the Mike Jackson treatment from last year, at least initially, where even if he's kind of holding up in coverage, he's still just getting so many massive amount of targets his way in order for the quarterback to avoid throwing to Tariq Woolen, that, he's going to have some completions in there. It's kind of the facts of life a bit with that. But I do think he gets up to 3 interceptions because of that also, because there is a little bit more of those more targets in there with that over the course of the season. But I like him for 3.
And now we have Mike Jackson, which is kind of a tough one right now because I don't know where he is. Is he in the doghouse at this point because of his bad preseason? Is he just looked at as a backup? Is he going to play any significant amount? I don't know. It's tough with this one.
Indeed it is. I wouldn't have him for any interceptions. I think he probably ends up starting a game or 2 at some point this season, just with where injuries tend to go with this stuff, that he'll be out there here or there maybe. But I don't think at this point, if Trey Brown ascends into the spot and overtakes him at this point, that's kind of not good for Mike as far as this year and long term. I mean, that's it. I don't think Brown relinquishes that starting role anytime soon.
I did 6 targets. 5 completions, 75 yards. I don't think he plays that much at this point. We might like Q Blue Kelly better. I mean, Q Blue Kelly was a draft pick, and I don't think Mike Jackson was.
No, I mean, well, and if you go and look at their testing numbers, it's probably, not even close between the two in any respect on any testing marker. So that could go that way, very much could. And certainly Jackson has not got necessarily a long-term plan here into the future as far as what the team looks or intends to do with him.
And you also got Kobe Bryant, who was listed as a safety on the initial depth chart. So this one's kind of interesting too. Don't know how much he's going to play. Don't know where he's going to play, but he's going to get on the field at some point, right? Between his versatility and flexibility as a player, at some point, we're going to need him to do something, right?
I don't know. As I look at it, you're getting Adams back sooner than later. Maybe if we're talking about the first 5 games, Brendan, when you have just Julian Love and then him, basically, that's where he's going to have to get his playing in. Because I think once Adams comes back and then factoring in Witherspoon, you have a kind of a 3-man thing there. If you have Brown on the outside and you determine Witherspoon's your slot, but then you have one of snaps that you want to get Love down there, and then you have snaps you want to get maybe Adams down that range and have Love out at strong safety. This is going to push somebody off the books there a little bit. And to me, Kobe Bryant's that guy that happens with at this point in time. So
yeah. Well, here's what I would say. He can play outside. He can play slot. He can play safety. All he needs is some injury stuff to happen, and he's going to have so many chances to get out there, even if it's just for a little bit.
But I don't think, for instance, free safety, which is what he played a lot of this preseason. I don't think that if you have an injury to, I think the reason he played, they want to run Jarek Reed as strong safety in the preseason quite a bit to get a run with him there and see how he could do. I think Jarek Reed's your guy coming off the bench for Quandre Diggs if there's an injury to Quandre Diggs. If you get to the point where you have Jamal Adams and Julian Love both healthy, and you have let's say you have Julian Love injured, now Jamal Adams is your full-time strong safety. Well, then you still have to meet Witherspoon down there in the slot. So who's he bumping off the field? Even if there is that injury.
Right. Maybe we like him more than Mike Jackson at this point. So if there's one cornerback injury, he's on the field as a corner.
Maybe, but you didn't like him enough well, it's possible, because last year was also determined by your need for the slot, your need that you didn't have anybody else in there to put. That was not him necessarily just losing to Mike Jackson on the outside. That was as much maybe driven by, holy crap, our slot looks bad right now. We need to get somebody in there that can make this functional.
And also, Mike Jackson looked pretty decent last year, and he's looked terrible so far this year. So the parameters have changed. I feel like he gets out there a little bit. I went with 26 targets, 16 completions, 250 yards, 1 interception, 4 passes defensed.
I can't see it myself. I think he's just kind of too stacked up all the way around. And if there's a lot of injuries across the board, sure, but all things being equal, if you maintain relative health, I think out there in the secondary, I think that he just ends up kind of being, stuck at this point behind a couple of, he plays 3 positions, but stuck behind the depth chart at all 3.
Could definitely happen. And we're kind of hoping it happens, right? Because that means nobody got hurt.
That's right. That's our ideal.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $9.99. Fellas, I just saw the Cardinals coach yesterday with the shots and big plays video. Was he not dressed like Pee Wee Herman on top of the other embarrassing things? Is he Rich Gannon's kid?
I don't know, man. It made me laugh though. Shots. And he's walking up, and the look the player's giving him is like, okay, Coach Gannon. Okay. The Cardinals situation is going to be a dumpster fire with poo on the inside and clowns coming barreling out of the dumpsters. It's going down the road. You're almost, it's going to be, it's like a bad movie, Brendan. It's like those movies so bad you can't help but watch and look. It's going to be like that. But to say that I have absolutely zero confidence, to say that Rich Gannon to me strikes me as one of the coaches in recent years who just, he just makes me just, his face, I call me what you want me. So you shouldn't, it just makes me cringe. It just makes me go, this is not a guy that's going to be a leader of men. This is not a guy that's going to want at the front of my football team. This is not a guy to lead anybody to the promised land. And, I just, Sean Desai is going to do so much more with that Eagles defense this year than Gannon did with that defense last year, with Vic Fangio, basically patting him on the head and making him feel warm and fuzzy to have his little bit of reinforcement there with the Eagles like Gannon did. It's insane that the Cardinals went this direction, but I'm also sure there wasn't a whole lot of hella people probably lining up for that job.
Do you think Jonathan Gannon has a TikTok account that he posts on?
He needs to take it down. If he has, take it down now.
Yeah, I'll bet he does. I'll bet he's got one.
He probably talks about it. This is going to help elevate the players. It's the TikTok generation. This is what we got to do with them. We just got to do TikTok. I like to practice.
Oh boy. Well, you know what? They got to give him at least a few years, right? He's taking over such a terrible team, so we're going to get to have fun with this for a few years. I
know you watch this, Brendan. They get Caleb Williams. You start watching some of the coaches that start percolating. They're going, I'll take the Cardinals job. I mean, I would now. I'd do it if
So you think Gannon might get Jim Mora 1 year on a terrible team and you're out of here?
Yes, I do.
Even Hugh Jackson got 2 years.
He's going to make Hackett look like Lombardi, I think, in my opinion. So I could be missing this one. This might be one where I was like, dude, you parked that guy way too early. You didn't even give him a chance to even coach one game. But I've listened to the press conferences. I've listened to him talk to his players. I just heard that meeting video that Garth talks about, folks, and do check those out. There's a couple of these videos out there of Gannon you can go check out if you're wondering why I'm being so harsh on the guy. But that meeting video of, I want straight, blah, 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 and is saying it with no passion and no sense of intensity and nothing that's going to connect with players. I mean, he might as well have been telling them about the insurance plans that they're going to go sell out in the streets. It was empty. His talk strikes as empty. It strikes as not impassioned. It doesn't strike me as a guy that lives and breathes football. Maybe he does, but it just doesn't come off that way. And these players, they can tell very quickly or not what's the real deal and what's not, what's fake and what isn't. And they're not going to respond to what they don't view as being legitimate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a fun year. It's going to be a fun year to watch from the outside.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Big Patty Daddy, thank you for the $2. Bruh, I lost my membership because a new card. And he did just become a member. So thank you for that, Big Patty Daddy.
It happens. Weird. YouTube's a little big with weird that the cards on that. They don't let people know. I've heard that happen a couple of times where they stop becoming a member because they don't send them the notification the card's expiring or whatever. It's kind of strange. You just have to stay on top of it.
The good news is YouTube actually keeps track of how long you were a member before it ended. So if you just re-become a member, it'll just continue to add on to whatever you had before.
That's how they should do it, because it's like, look, don't make them lose all of their time just because they happen to miss a month or something if a card goes off. So I'm glad they have made that adjustment in there, because I like seeing it when you got the 26, 27 months in there and stuff. It's cool.
Daniel Bailey, thank you for the $1.99. Why does Trey jump Bryant automatically? SMH. Because Trey Brown played better in 2021 than Kobe Bryant played last year, I would say.
I think Daniel Brennan's on point with this one. I don't say this lightly, Daniel, when I say it. In watching Carroll come through here through the years and rookie cornerbacks that have gotten the opportunity to play on the football field, and it hasn't happened a lot. Brandon Browner wasn't a rookie when he went out there. Sherman was. But then when we think further ahead of it, who was the next corner that got opportunities to be out there as a rookie? I think maybe Deshaun Shedd got a little bit of run. Shaquille Griffin obviously got a little bit of a run. But the point being is it's hard for rookies to even get on the football field with Carroll. I think Trey has been the third most impressive rookie cornerback here throughout the Coach Carroll time. More impressive than Walter Thurman in his first year. Go down the line. He was really good through that period, Daniel, before the injury happened. And with Bryant last year, he got smoked up in that Steelers game. He did not look good in that Steelers game. Now, that wasn't the only, there's obviously all the preseason, but I think what the coaching staff has told you with this, Daniel, and moving Bryant to the slot last year, and then especially this year now moving him to the safety position, is that they're searching for a spot for him. That's not to say, hey, we like him here at outside corner and he just needs to wait till he can get his opportunity and we'll just keep him out there until we can give him that opportunity. That's them indicating, well, we're trying to kind of still figure this out with this guy. And I think that is probably more representative of him not necessarily playing all that great when he's played on the outside in practices.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know what to think of Kobe right now. I feel like there are a bunch of different positions he could play, but I don't know which one is his. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, like you did, but I will say, Daniel, like you, I would have loved to have seen him get a little bit more run outside. I had that Steeler game as basically the only time I really felt like I got a really good view of him out there to see what he could kind of do, and he was a rookie. I would like to have a little bit more of an opportunity to see him actually truly fail out there, a guy that was a two-time All-ACC corner, a Walter Thorpe award winner coming out. It would be cool to see if he really would maybe do okay out there, but I just don't think the team's determined that they don't want to do that.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Honestly, it would be hilarious if the Cards rally around this coach, maybe an NFL Ted Lasso.
Maybe just one of those guys that's so out there on it that it comes back around and sort of connects in some weird fashion, and that it's just so outside the box, on that. But, he just strikes me as one of these kind of guys that is just, I don't know. I think the Cardinals settled on him. I don't think they had a lot of options. I don't think they were willing to pay any coaches a lot of money. So he's probably a guy that took the bare minimum, because hell, they're paying still Kingsbury some money, right? And they're not like the Cardinals are known for having real, big pockets and deep pockets. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe he does accomplish that, but I remain very, very skeptical on this one.
Right.
Thank you, Garth.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's do safety now. We're right at the very back end of the defense here. Safety, again, kind of tough. Mm-hmm. So I'll start with an easy one because I think we can count on this guy to play every game. It's Quandre Diggs. Mm-hmm. We know exactly what he's going to do out there. There's no mystery with Quandre Diggs. He's going to protect the back line. He's going to make interceptions. He's going to be the last line of defense. I got 5 interceptions, 9 passes defensed, and 387 yards allowed in coverage.
In my opinion, Quandre Diggs, at least from an interception standpoint, has his best year as a Seattle Seahawks this upcoming season. He has 7 interceptions, and I believe that for 2 main reasons, Brendan. Number one, he's never had this associative talent around him in the secondary and up front since he's arrived here. Every year, we're kind of getting by defensively since he's been here a bit. Now that's not as much, I think, the case this year. Number two, he's going to be playing less cover 3 this year than ever before. So he's getting more opportunities to go up there and jump routes and go make plays now up on the front end of things, not just having to stay back in center field 24/7. And remembering what he's done in the past few years, in those interceptions, just having that role, that's always been allowed to kind of do back there for the most part. So I think he takes those steps forward. I think he's 12 passes defensed, I think, through the year. But the interceptions especially come up more than they ever have here for the Seahawks.
Would be nice. He can do it. I mean, last year he let some absolute gimmies go through his hands. He would have gotten there if he just brought him in.
Exactly. Exactly. And that came with the transition to this new defense, which
Yeah.
I think is as he was still getting over that foot, as he said through most of the year, he was still trying to learn to trust that foot. All that was happening while that was occurring. And that I think isn't, I guess we come back to it, Brendan, that ain't luck. That wasn't by happenstance that occurred over the course of that season, those drops. And
Yeah.
normally I think he's not going to have those drops. Normally he's going to catch those balls.
Mm-hmm. I also gave him 63 tackles for whatever that's worth. I know tackle numbers or whatever. Jamal Adams, I did 65 tackles, 7 for loss. So getting back into the backfield, I had 4 sacks, 3 interceptions, 6 passes defensed, and 339 yards allowed in coverage.
I think we'd agree on the passes defense. I had 5 sacks and 2 interceptions. So we're both pretty close to about the same marker on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that they find a way to use him for this. He's into the defense he used with the Jets. So they'll bring him up creatively, I think, around the box and give him some opportunities for that stuff. And he gets a couple picks on the other side of it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I think this defense is going to be good for him.
Yeah, it's a great fit. This is more along the lines of what he did with the Jets in his first couple of years. We brought him here and then had him do something separate of what had made him an all-pro with the Jets, asking him to play so much cover 2 and at times single high safety. That's not Jamal's game.
However, I do believe our most prolific safety in terms of tackle count will be Julian Love because he's going to be everywhere. I think he's going to play in every game. He's going to be in the box. He's going to be deep. He'll be playing some slot corner. He might play outside corner. He's going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
71 tackles, 2 interceptions, 6 passes defensed, and 6 tackles for loss.
We're pretty much along on the same lines here. 2 interceptions. I think those all sound about right for the tackles for loss. And yes, I would agree he's going to lead your team in tackles. He was, interestingly enough, a top 25 guy in the NFL last year in tackles. And I thought that was really eye-opening to be having a guy come from the safety position. As you look at all the names around him, it's all a bunch of linebackers. And so I definitely have a lot of confidence he'll probably be that guy to lead you in tackles out of the secondary. But get you a couple interceptions on top of it too.
Mm-hmm. And then Jarek Reed, I did 11 tackles. He just gets out there at some point, plays around, maybe garbage time, but nothing overly impactful.
I do believe he's your backup free safety, and Quandre is getting up there in age. So if something does happen, I think they do go to, I mean, they might slide just Julian over to free safety if that were to happen too, because he's obviously played everywhere. But I really like Jarek Reed's tape, Brendan, coming out of preseason. And I'm a lot more encouraged by this guy going into the future, maybe being a part of this team and a part of the plan.
And that is it for the safeties because we no longer have Joey Blunt and we already did Kobe Bryant. So made it to the end of the defense. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. I used to be impressed by tackle numbers until Jordan Brooks broke Bobby's record 1 year later. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point.
Yeah, it was definitely unfortunate that he did that in that way. I like that. But yeah, tackle numbers are not the best thing to go off of as far as assessing a player's productivity. That's for sure.
Right. And I think that Jordan Brooks is kind of a perfect case study on that. Like maybe more than any other player I can think of.
Yeah. Just he eats up a lot of tackles, but where's the impact and how do you feel that impact then on holding teams up as far as points, stopping teams as far as total yardage go? And that's the part that doesn't go together with those tackle numbers, which then has you come back to going, well, how much value do I put in just bare tackle numbers then, base tackle numbers then?
Daniel Bailey, thank you for the $1.99. Bold prediction. I think Reek will get 10 interceptions.
Let's go, Daniel. Let's go.
I feel like if he gets to 8, other teams are just going to be like, okay, we're not throwing at him anymore.
Yeah, I feel the same, Daniel, where it's just when it gets to a point at times like he showed last year where it's just, this is not just a little slight threat to us throwing it over there. Like he might have better ball skills than our receiver. It's going to be hard to get to that spot of things, but he's got the ball skills and the ability. He had 5 interceptions last year? 6? Was it 6?
I think it was 6.
So he had 6 interceptions last year. He probably had his hands on about 5 other balls, 2 or 3 of those being fairly realistic ability to make the catches on them, others being just insanely high degree of difficulty catches. Like you had the Panthers game where he jumped that route and he didn't even realize he was going to go that quick and get up to the ball, and he got the ball in his hands and he just went to knock it away. But it was one of those things where corners will do where they'll go up to knock it away and then they go afterwards, they're like, oh, I could have caught it. I knocked it away, and I actually was in a position to actually make the catch instead of just trying to knock it away in that moment. I think he'll learn a little bit on that this year. So it's possible he can get to that spot, Daniel. It'll be really driven by, to Brennan's point on this, Daniel, to get to that area. We got to have the people on the other side holding up their end of the bargain. Because if they know they go the slot, they know they can go short, they know they can go over to the Z receiver on the other side. Well, he's not going to get those opportunities at that point.
They weren't doing it last year. I remember the passing chart against the Raiders where they only threw his way once the whole game, I think.
Yeah. It was first 6 games of the year, he was targeted 29 times, I believe. And then the last 6 games of the year, he was targeted 17 times. So and including multiple games down the stretch with only 1 target.
All right. Did you do anything for special teams?
I hadn't considered it much, no.
Yeah.
But I have a general outlook on how I think it's going to go. So
yeah, I had Myers going 32 of 37, so not as good as last year, but still pretty good.
It's a down year, right? You were factoring in the.
I don't think it's going to be a down year in the sense that he's bad, because he has been bad before. I just think that last year was really good, and I don't think he can keep that up. So I went 32 of 37.
I like it. I'll go in that same degree where I think it's going to be a little bit of a dip. I do think he probably ends up with like over 40 attempts, because I think this offense is going to be so good at moving the chains and having a lot of consistent drives. They might not get up to get a touchdown, but they will get to that side of the field. And he's got that big 50-yard leg where he can at least make those attempts. I think that will give him a little bit of an opening to get up over the 40 attempt mark this year.
I do have him going 5 for 7 on 50 plus.
Ooh, there we go. I like that. I like that. I like the fact that we got a guy that can make those kind of kicks with this kind of offense too, Brennan, because touchdowns are nice. I get all that stuff, but you got an offense every time that's going down and getting points, coming away with points every time, or just about every time coming down with points. That's going to be an effective offense that should win most of your vast majority of your games if you're doing stuff like that, if your offense can operate like that.
Also 48 of 50 on extra points. So I had us getting 50 touchdowns exactly.
Let's go. I can see it. Yeah.
And 57% touchback percentage, which would be an improvement over last year. That's like, I don't know why he has such a big leg and his touchback rate is so low, but that's
because they're purposeful on it. They ask him
to do that.
Yes. They did in the preseason. So
yeah, I don't get it.
They mix it up a bit. They will have him booted into the back of the end zone at times, but a lot of the times they're trying. Carroll believes that I'm going to save 5 yards. I'll get them down at the 19 or 20 yard line. He doesn't believe there's a threat that the team's going to bring it back or house it, that it's only really a benefit at that point to do it that way. But let's also remember too, you're not wrong though. Here's where you're right. The NFL instituted that new rule about calling a fair catch on kickoffs, even at the 1 or 2 yard line, and you get at the 25 yard line now. So that will increase. There will be teams that'll be like, we know what you're trying to do here, Seattle. We don't trust our special teams. No, I'll fair catch this and call, no, you're not going to get us. But they think they're going to get like a fumble. They think there'll be a hard hit that comes up and you'll stop him at the 19 or 20, or you'll get a fumble. I bet Carroll thinks exactly that on doing that, and that's why.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there haven't been that many big returns against the Seahawks lately, so.
No, I can't remember the last one, really. I mean, that got significant.
2018,
yardage.
The special teams was bad. We gave up a couple big ones.
Pretty far ago. It's almost 5 years ago now. 5, 6 years. Not bad.
Yeah, I have Dixon punting 62 times this year. 48.2 yards per punt, 43.9 net yards per punt, which is slightly worse than last year, but basically the same area.
Yep. I think he's going to be one of the better punters in the league. This guy's awesome. So I see this.
Yeah. Didn't do much in terms of like kick returns. I initially had Kenny McIntosh doing kick returns. I had 22 for 527, but doesn't seem like he's going to get that chance this year. So honestly, DJ's probably capable of doing that. He's a good kick returner.
DJ is really good in the kick return game. I knock on him on the punt return, but I would not do that on the kick return. I think he's a top 15 guy when it comes to returning kickoffs.
All right. Did you do anything for the team, like in terms of like points per game, yards per game, anything like that?
No, I didn't go down with.
Well, I have points per game 26.1, which I project to be about 5th in the league.
Okay.
5th in the league. I got 280 passing yards per game, which 4th, and 128 rushing yards per game, which would be 9th.
I kind of like all those. I would bump up the first one just a tiny bit, by just a bit, but the other two definitely feel right. What's the first one you just said?
The first one was points per game.
I think we get up to like 27.5, almost pushing into 28.
That would probably be like just below the Bengals and the Bills. And honestly, the Bills and Chiefs, I don't know. Like the Bills are hurting when they lost the bowl. And the Chiefs, if they miss Kelsey for any significant amount of time, that's big. So we might be right up there with them if we get there.
You're 100% right. Those teams are going to have to hope that everything holds true to that for them to keep in that same, hemisphere. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars have a chance of being with Lawrence and getting the guy they got who's back off suspension now has been looking really good for them. They got a tight end in there for him to throw to now. But I do look at it like you got, you mentioned 4,700 yards. I think you had for Gino, and to me, I had about 2,500 yards for the offense as far as the rushing attack goes. And that might sound like a lot, Brennan, but I mean, we ran for 2,050 last year, and that's without the running game being terribly consistent throughout the whole course of the season. You ran for well over 2,000 yards. That alone, if you ran for 4,700, if you threw for 4,700 and you ran for 2,500, that's 7,200 yards on the season. That would be the number one offense in the NFL.
Yeah. I came out to 408.4 yards per game, which would be about fourth. I think we can do that.
Yeah. I think all these are numbers in the same place. It's going to be one of the top offenses in the NFL. And some of this is dependent upon the development, JSN staying healthy in the slot, that type of thing. But you have an offense that can attack anybody in any way, Brendan. You have the tight ends that collectively they're awesome. Over 1,000 yards last year. You got the receivers on the outside and the slot guy on the inside and running backs that can catch. You've got a modernized offensive scheme now that's been updated the last couple of years. I think there's every reason to believe that this offense can get up into that high water mark. Last year, we were at 6,500 yard pace last year through 12 games. I went and looked it up.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. So defensively, I do have us giving up 23.3 points a game, which would be below average, but it's important to remember you're going to give up more points if you have a really good offense. So yeah. I don't think the defense will be bad, but the stats will be bad in some areas because that's the way it goes when you have a big time offense.
Yeah. Would you not agree that the productivity of this defense is going to be largely based upon from our keeping offenses within check relatively, to your point? I agree with the numbers that you posted up second, but it's really going to be about the opportunistic nature of the defense. Is it not? It's going to be about how many, you'll be one of the league leaders up there in sacks. You'll be one of the league leaders up there in pressures. You'll be one of the league leaders up there in turnovers. You'll be kind of causing some havoc with what you're bringing to bear a little bit. And that's where you'll help to make yourself better. But your point is well said on the fact that this is the way it tends to go when you have the big offenses, that the opposition is going to feel like it has to score now too. This is like what you've talked about, where the running game can be a bit neutralized in the worry category of things from our standpoint, because if teams feel like they got to score, they're not usually like, we got to score, let's run the ball. We got to score, let's throw. And that's where the points will go up, but now you're maybe getting more interceptions. You're maybe getting more sacks. You're getting the pick sixes now dialed up more because these teams are taking bigger risks with that offense. And,
I have 26 takeaways, which would project to be about 8th in the league.
I like that. I think if it's 15, 18, 10, that's about right. That's almost the exact number I've got when I just added up my number here too. So
might get padded a little bit beyond that because we played the Rams and Cardinals twice, and those games could be.
It's true.
It could be a little bit deceiving, right? Because
13 sacks and 4 interceptions.
Yeah. How many times did remember when we beat the Cardinals 58-0? It was they turned it over like 8 times.
Yeah, Sherman with a pick 6, and it can get a little raw dog like that at that point. So it's possible we might be able to feast a little extra on some of those 4 games we get to play this year. That's 17% of your schedule, something like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's about it. I think we covered everything. Anything else you want to throw out there?
Just to offer as far as on the sacks part of it, when we ran our numbers through. So I've got 43.5 off the edges, 14 from all of those other sources we talked about, Miles Adams, Jaron Reed, Mike Morris. That would put us at 57.5 sacks for next year, which I think would also have us right around the top 3 area of things.
Especially with how much we'll force other teams to throw because of our offense.
Exactly. So that's where I come back around to. They might have these offenses getting some points on this defense still. You might have a defense overall still middle of the road in points allowed and yards allowed. But the effectiveness, I think, will be most measured by the havoc factor. What are we getting interceptions? What are we getting pressure rates? What are we getting as far as fumbles? What are we getting? Let's look at those markers, because last year we did really well with the turnovers. We did really well with these pressure rates as it was. I think that it'll only get better this year with the improved talent across the board on that side of the ball.
Yeah, by the way, the Eagles had 70 sacks last year.
There we go. So I think it's within reason to say that. I'm not shooting too far from the moon within that. We would be, Eagles set a high water mark and a record. It would put us, I think, within top 5 though of at 57.5.
Yeah. You mean for the season, right?
For the season.
Yeah.
For the season. Yeah.
Because there are going to be some teams out. I mean, although actually maybe the Niners won't be up there if they're not going to have Bosa for a few games.
What are they doing over there, Brennan? Why don't you walk me through what's going on with that front office mentality going on with Bosa right now? Tell me the plan here of the brilliant organization known as the 49ers at the moment.
Well, I mean, I think that nobody wants to sign first. Bosa, Jones, and now Brian Burns, right? Because whoever signs first gets the least. So I think those 3 guys are kind of like holding each other up a little bit here. Once one guy signs, the other guys can like at least move closer to a resolution.
Do you think?
Shock me.
Do you think Bosa looks at Burns as like he's on my level?
No, not at all. But I think he knows that if I sign, then Burns signs for something pretty close, if not more than what I got, because he'll point to Bosa and be like, "I want to beat that."
That's a tough argument for Burns to make. I mean, I and I say that because I go, well, Bosa lands at 33, 34, 35. Like, to me, Burns is going to have a tough argument to be making to say past 27, I think.
I agree.
Yeah,
I definitely agree. Like, but that's how it goes, right? If you're good, you get paid top of the market.
Yeah, no, you are. It is that he's worth that. I mean, he is definitely worth that. But that's where I come back to struggle for me to understand how the Bosa thing relates back a little bit with Burns on it, where it's like, I guess it does. It doesn't hurt Burns, that's for sure. It doesn't hurt your argument to be made that I should be up at that mark. And by the way, I think the Panthers completely messed that up last year by not moving me at the trade deadline when the Rams were reportedly offering multiple first-round picks for him, and they turned it down.
Yeah, that was awful.
That I mean, just what are you doing there, Carolina? And now they're in that pickle like the Niners are, where it's like, what's the plan? You don't want to pay him, but you don't want to move him, but you don't want to pay him. He's missing the first game at this point. We're on Tuesday evening, Brendan. There's been no end in sight of this, and he could sign a deal tomorrow, and that body's not going to be ready to go 100% of the snaps there against Pittsburgh. Kittle's also, by the way, looking like he's going to be in potentially danger of not making that Pittsburgh game on the road, 10 a.m. against a Pittsburgh team that I think is getting a little bit underrated across the national perspective. I'm not a big Pickett guy, but I've gone back and watched some of his tape last year, and he's functional potentially there with that Steelers offense, and that just bodes well for us, doesn't it, Brendan? Because this division could come down to a game or two, and if they lose a couple games because they've gone cheap route on Bosa, then good for our Seahawks. It's fun watching the Niner fans with the trades they're talking about, Brendan. The one I saw today was we'll go Bosa for Quinnen Williams and Garrett Wilson.
That would be a good trade. I couldn't even hate on that. If they can pull that off, then
if they can pull it off,
if
they can pull it off, like, why would the Niners ever do that deal? Like, or the Jets? Why would the Jets ever do that deal? I mean, that's a complete to me taking of the Jets, because they still have to pay Bosa on that. They got Wilson on a cheap rookie deal for 2 more years. Well, Quinnen Williams is expensive, but he's way cheaper than what Bosa costs. I could see them making that trade, but they do like one of those. What the kid they got, remember James Johnson, the Johnson kid they got out of the draft last year, they'd flick him back and they would throw in like first round picks, I think.
Yeah, I just can't believe it's come to this. And the Kittle thing also, doesn't it just feel like Kittle's going to be injured for the rest of his career at this point? Like, he's always going to be dealing with something.
I think he's out 6. I always write him down for being out 6 games a year somewhere. Like, that's always minimum what you're getting with him. He's just one of those guys that's never going to give you a full season of slate of games. And, he's effective for the games he's in. But yeah, I do look at him as a guy that's always going to be yearly in an injured situation. And so, you're always going to be without him. That's the problem with the Niners. They're top heavy, and you have too many guys. We talked about this. You have these legs of this table that are being the Niner table held up by these set guys, and you knock a couple of those legs out. There's not enough complementary parts here for those other legs to sustain everything. The table is going to fall, And
Absolutely.
if you can get this is where the luck part does it. If you can get lucky at the injury and you can have everybody playing, then you'll be great, Niners. But you lose a couple of these front end guys, and you dip, and you lose a 3 or 4 games off of where your record's going to be this year, and possibly with it the contending status this season with it too. It's a big deal. Losing Bosa, your most important defensive, he makes that line go. I look at that defense, and it's a remarkably different defense to me without Bosa in there. As much as any defense in the National Football League losing,
He's the best player on that team, right?
Absolutely, he is, and it's you. They need him. They do not have the same kind of talent level that they've had there at times. And that's the other thing about this. This isn't the Niner 4 stack that they've had down there in recent years. There's got a lot of question marks. Even guys that bring good stuff like Hargrave. Hargrave's going to get torn apart in the ground game. One thing I was thinking about, we got to remember with Wilkes. Wilkes is not a wide 9 guy.
That's a good point.
He doesn't come from that history of running this. He's running in another man's scheme right now and how he's going to try to make it work. And that wide 9 has got a lot of vulnerabilities to the ground game. And you're going to put out guys like Hargrave or Kinlaw that have been question marks on those side of things. And there's some vulnerabilities. There's some big vulnerabilities.
I think they're kind of done with Kinlaw. I don't expect him to play that much this year.
No, I've heard them trying to hype him some. He'll be leading the second unit. Oh, is that what you pick a guy 8th overall for?
Yeah, leading the second unit to what exactly?
Yeah, exactly. Holding the water until the first you didn't get back in there.
All right. Connor Olschlager, thank you for the $5 once again. Are you worried about intermediate middle of the field coverage? If Bobby has same role as in LA, Brooks may be asked to do even more in coverage. Well, I think on passing downs, we're going to run a lot of 3-3-5 with 3 safeties. And I think that third safety, be it Julian Love or Jamal Adams or however you want to look at it, is going to be tasked with some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think the complexity angle of this can hopefully help this out, Connor. Part of being able to lock in on a guy like Brooks in recent years and target him is the simple nature of the Seahawks defense. We know prior what coverages you're going to run, and then we know prior what player within those coverages you're going to run who is a negative when it comes to zone coverage. Now we can attack you. Okay, well, what happens when I provide complexity? What happens when I start mixing my coverages up? What happens when I'm not just running cover 3 75% of the time? That's where there's some opening here for this to be figured out by the schematic nature of things rather than needing by the talent nature of things. And this is where you can put your players in a position to succeed from a coaching standpoint by how you call a game plan. So I think there's a way to cover some of this up, Connor. I think Brendan's point about running more defensive backs is part of this as well. So there's some creative ways to solve this, but the issues with Brooks and coverage are there. And Bobby, while he has, lost maybe a step or 2, still did post a 79 coverage grade last year. Still did have a good amount of passes defensed. I know that this is the whole narrative out there is that he somehow now sucks in coverage and past 5 feet off the line. He can't cover anything, but it's not really the case with Bobby. It really isn't.
He's had some pretty good years in coverage. I think it was 2019 was the year he was just awful, like getting destroyed. And then since then he's gotten better. Yeah,
agreed. And I'm not saying he's going to be dominant with it or that he's some amazing part of it. But hell, I mean, compared to Jordan Brooks in coverage, compared to Jordan, so I think we'll be better in coverage in that angle this year. But the Brooks thing, you're going to always have to kind of cover up a little bit when he's out there.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Shanahan is the Stephen Hawking of drawing stuff on a grease board. He doesn't need actual players to complete his vision. On offense, I would agree with you, but Bosa is not on offense.
Yeah, exactly. As far as the offensive mind goes, sure. He definitely does that. And but it's also part of why he ends up in a place where he is with the quarterback situation, where it's just like, just execute my offense, just throw it to where I say you to throw it. It's like not actually asking the guy to quarterback, but be just the coach's mind out there in complete form. And there's some good that brings, but there's also, I think, where you limit your quarterback a bit to that level of things as well, not allowing them to kind of have some freedom within it. But Stephen Hawking's great, man. That's great. He's just missing the electronic voice.
Right. Going to be very interesting to see how that whole situation turns out. But and part of me kind of feels like it's too bad we don't play the Niners early this year. If we played the Niners early and dodge Bosa, that's pretty big.
Yeah, if we got him like in week 2, like we did last year, this year, I wouldn't have minded, especially Brock Purdy still just coming back off that surgery and Kittle now beat up a bit. And where's that Niner offensive line at? And, but I think as well, we're going to get some of the benefits of this down the road too, Brendan, because they don't have the depth this year that they've had prior. And so you get into the depths of the season. I think that we're still going to, may not be the same way it looks now, but there will be some way we're going to see it later on of like, ooh, they're a little weak out here at safety. Ooh, their right side of their offensive line's a little bit tough right now. Oh.
Yeah. And we know those things are true. I mean, who is the Niners right tackle? Who? Like who is that? I've never heard of that guy before.
I know. I'm as well. And you look at him and go, oof, this is going to be tough. And you know, they seemed, Niner fans seem to have blown over it, and the coaches have seemed blown over. You go, guys, this is, and again, we come back to Shanahan's brilliance, because Shanahan thinks that he can get the ball out of the quarterback's hands in 2.6 seconds like he did last year. But teams are going to eventually press down on those routes. Teams are eventually going to force you to throw deep. And what are your answers then? Do you have the quarterback that can throw it? Do you have the ability, guys, to get out open deep on that? We'll see. We will see. But that's that's where that offensive line gets tested to me, Brendan. The second you can't throw it 2.6 seconds, now you're going to see that offensive line look not good at all, and the quarterback be under a lot of duress, more so than they've been there in many years.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay, and I think that's going to be a wrap for our final. This is kind of the final before the season stream, because the next one's pregame for the Rams, which is associated, I think, with the season. So we made it through the off season.
Last show of the offseason, Brendan. It's all in the books. It's been a tremendous offseason, and it's been so much fun to do this with you and watching this team grow and coming together. I mean, it's like a beautiful painting where you've seen all the colors, and now you're seeing them up on the deal, and it's, you know, it's we just got Carroll with his Bob Ross fro coming off of him, and you know, it's awesome.
Yeah. So hopefully we have an awesome season this year. I want to thank everybody for coming out. We had like 350 people throughout a good chunk of the stream. We had a lot of fun tonight. Next stream will be hosted over on Brandon's side, although it's obviously going to be cast to both channels, and it will be that week 1 pregame. Everybody get ready. It is going to be moved to 8:00, so we can let the Thursday night football game at least mostly get over with before we start. I know that people appreciate it when we do that. And yeah, Brandon, thank you for coming out and being with me tonight.
My pleasure as always, Brendan. Love chopping up with Hawks.
Right. Sorry about my webcam issues tonight. I'll try to fix that. Should be able to fix that later tonight. Probably just need to unplug it and plug it back in.
Give it a kick, Brendan. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. All right. So, guys, we made it. We're here. The off season is officially a thing of the past. We are less than 2 days away from a real NFL game being played.
Let's go.
And we are 5 days away, less than 5 days away from a Seahawks game getting played. This season could be big. This season could be special. So we got to say it. Let's say it one more time this offseason. One more time before we start really thinking about this season getting underway here. Let's say it, and remember to say it every time for the rest of the season, every day, every hour, every minute of the just say it.
Just run and say it. Say it. It's an affirmation, people. This is the secret. We're manifesting this.
Speak it into existence. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.